Okay, good evening everyone. Good evening everyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Welcome to the West Central Area Committee. It's good to see a lot of people here. For those people who aren't familiar with this building, the toilets are out through the back and the exits are just the front door here. There's another emergency exit at the back and then there's an emergency exit there. You may be aware that we have a member of the public filming this evening, so those people who don't feel comfortable being on camera, perhaps you might want to locate yourself in a position away from the camera. What we're going to do this evening is start with the open forum, and we have a number of questions. As you'll see on the agenda, it's a very busy agenda this evening, so we're going to keep the open forum to 30 minutes maximum, and we're going to start with a series of questions which have been submitted. But before we do that, I just want to go through some housekeeping items. So apologies from members of the committee who aren't able to attend.
Cannot hear you.
Okay.
Cannot hear you.
Apologies from Councillor Reid and Councillor Kipling, and Sergeant Essex has sent his apologies.
Okay. We then have minutes from the previous meeting. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes from the previous meeting? Councillors? Councillor Dick?
Page 9.
Just, there's a roving mic on your table.
Do you mind if I use the one contributing?
Okay, on page 9, there was an item about a third of the way down, 10.1, it looks like. I think it should say that future plans will be circulated to residents groups and ward councillors.
Okay.
Otherwise it's a little ambiguous.
Sorry, do you mind if I... Is that yours?
Does anyone have any other comments on the minutes from the previous meeting? Okay, so that. We now turn to matters arising from the previous meeting. So we'll just quickly go through these items. Councillor Burns, did you want to?
Thank you. On page 10, is with regards to the bollard on Leave Street. I've been following it up with officers recently, and I'm assured that it will be installed in about 2 months' time, I think, hopefully. So, I mean, basically, because they're going to put a different type of bollard in, so they're also going to do some work around the bollard at the same time and do a bit of resurfacing or patching as well. So, I have been chasing, and it's further along. The City Council insists that they're going to deliver it, so even though the county did offer it. I don't really mind who does it as long as they do it.
Something in the minutes is inaccurate.
If you just go through the chair, and I have Councillor Holland next. Actually, is this on this
On
item?
that point, does that mean the minute which is quoting me is inaccurate? It is certainly inaccurate because it refers to King's Street when it's King Street. But it says bollard on New Square, and I think it actually, from what Councillor Kearns has just said, means Adam Leave Street. I'm sure that's what I've read.
Okay.
So it's page 23, actions. I've already spoken to Claire Tomaker. Just the wording on timescale and progress on 15105 WCAC. It's not that Councillor Holland advised that the letter was not necessary. It's essentially that the situation has moved on so rapidly. But I think it is important if this committee resolves to write a letter representing matters that have been raised by the Central Area Committee, that they are articulated to the police. So it's a semantic, but I think there is a slightly different message to me saying
Yeah, and I
it's not
think we've
necessary.
agreed that we will send a letter,
Yeah,
actually.
thank you.
Yeah, to both constabularies, I understand.
Yeah.
Councillor Gillespie.
Thanks. On page 9, the question about vehicles parked on East Road blocking the Sackle Lane. Is there any update on that?
Yeah, this is the other item on page 23, which was on the action sheet. So, Councillor Burns again.
Yes, I've submitted a local highways improvement project for that, and I'm waiting to see how that is received.
Any other points to raise in relation to the action points from the previous meeting? No? And then the final point, declarations of interest before we move on to the open forum. Do any members of the committee have any declarations of interest that they'd like to raise now? Or you can also do so during the course of the meeting. No? Okay. So we now turn to the open forum. We've got quite a lot of questions to get through on the open forum. So I'm going to start with the questions which were submitted prior to the meeting. And I start with the questions from Dick Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One raised two questions concerning Midsummer Common. Just working all right. Yep. The first concerns parking on the Common. This is a long-running saga in which about 4 years ago I got so fed up with inaction by the council on blocking illegal parking on the Common that I went to the local government ombudsman, and he ruled, well, he didn't rule, he sent letters back saying he wanted to see a solution by the 17th of October. And that was the 17th of October 2011. I had discussions with Tony Ainsley at the time, who was head of Open Spaces and Streets and Open Spaces, and she had a meeting with the legal team and put together a procedure for dealing with this in future. Basically saying we have to enforce the policy of no parking on the Common, and that had to be done through two steps, an informal process and a formal process. Now the informal process has been going on for 15 years, the council told me. In that time they've been trying to persuade the two establishments, the pub and the restaurant, to stop people parking outside their property, either their staff or friends of their staff or customers. It doesn't seem to have got any further than that, although there is a formal process in which it says you go to formal process, and I read out the order for that. There is a history of non-compliance with informal action. That's one reason we're going to formal action. Well, I would say after 15 years of failing to do that, that's quite sufficient. It then goes on and says the consequences of non-compliance, the health, safety, the environment, or other council priorities are unacceptable and or immediate. And I would say that applies. The fourth one is there is a demonstrable harm in the immediacy of the area, and that certainly does apply. And the fourth, out of the 8 reasons, is an informal approach has failed. So having got that far, a lot of us around this table, and I guess elsewhere, were asked to submit evidence of illegal parking. We've been doing this for years with photographs and cases. At that point, it's supposed to go on to formal procedures, which ends up with it going to court to basically fine those who do the parking. And again, I read out, they put together a policy, a procedure for dealing with unauthorised driving and parking on common land. This is the council's policy. It states that when evidence of an offence has been gathered, subject to the enforcement policy, and there's massive evidence being gathered, a prosecution file will be raised and submitted to legal services, who will make a legal privilege decision on a case-by-case basis whether or not to pursue the matter in the magistrate's court. I can only assume that legal departments have, each time this case being put to them, said no go. And I find this amazing. Decisions are made in the council by the legal department They are making their own case and they're covering themselves with legal professional privilege, so they will not tell anybody why they have said no go. Surely it is for council to decide whether to take an enforcement procedure to court, not for the legal team to make that decision, and as far as I can see, always saying no go. I would welcome the councillor's views on this, whether I have the story right or not.
Okay, do you want to quickly say your second question as well, Dick? You had two questions.
The second,
Very quickly though.
yes, the second question relates to the other end of the common, where a part of land that was given to the Cambridge City Council as common land and made part of Midsummer Common has been sold off. That is in a sense history because it was sold back in 2008. What grieves a lot of people is the building on there, the planning commission made sure that there was a footpath kept beside that property to gain access to the community orchard and the allotments from Auckland Road. And the applicants did say in their planning application that this was a pedestrian access right of way. Well, they have now chosen to block that right of way to pedestrians, saying that the contractor's sale, only said that council employees had a right of way and the public did not. And I find this staggering. I've been looking back through the files on the website to see when this sale of that piece of what was common land, part of Midsummer Common, was actually agreed by council and the sale made. I can find nothing from this committee of that sale coming before it, so I presume it came somewhere else, and I can find nothing on the website that shows me what that contractor sale says and how it comes as council seems to have taken away from the public a right of access to Midsummer Common off Auckland Road. And I just want clarification of this from the council of why they've got themselves into this position. Was it deliberate, mistake, or quite why?
Okay, shall we, because Dave Prinsep, who is the head of property, is with us this evening, so if we just address that question first, and then I'll have a response from one of the senior officers in relation to your first question.
Okay. In relation to the questions which previously declared, the two issues were the gate and the wall as well. Do you want to address that at the same time?
Yes, please.
Okay. So with the gate, the council has given permission for a gate to be there. In relation to the creation of the gate, that's not necessarily an issue, but the use of that gate could be an issue. And I think, coming on to the issue of the hedge as well, if the hedge is reinstated, they won't be able to use the gate anyway. I haven't seen any proposal from the synagogue to use the gate, or to have permission to use the gate, or to create a pathway from that gate if it's supposed to be for fire escape purposes. So I haven't had any correspondence from the synagogue in that respect. If there are any works required on the common in connection with that, I would require consent to do that. And we haven't given that at all. We did give permission for the hedge to be removed, but when we were aware that happened during construction, I went on site, I think you were on site at the time, and we were given assurances that the contractor would reinstate the hedgerow. Because the rear part of the hedgerow is cut back to make access for creating the wall. And I'll raise that with the synagogue to get some reinstatement agreed there, because that wasn't agreed with the synagogue that actually would happen. The blocking of the passageway, you asked if we had given permission for that to be blocked. We don't have to give permission. The land was sold to the synagogue and they control that. They've set out in the community their approach to managing the access way, which is their legal advice at this point in time is they will continue to allow unrestricted access throughout the year, but they've been advised to block the access once a year to protect that position, so it doesn't become a public right of way, pending the decision of the county council as to whether they recognise that as a public right of way or not. So that's the situation in relation to the passageway. I'm aware it was blocked last week for one day, which is what they said they would do.
Did they stop your own staff from going down that passageway on that day?
No.
So your own staff actually used that passageway?
We could do.
Did you?
We didn't.
Well, I would have thought if they threatened to block that passageway and you claim you have a right to use of it, you would send somebody to use it.
If we need to use it, we would have used it.
So that you did not...
I don't know if Alistair Wilson or any of these two used the passageway on that day.
You said in an email to me that they weren't going to block the passageway.
Sorry?
You said in an email to me and others that they did not intend to block it.
They have said, and they've given the information to the residents saying, we will block it for one day a year. and I believe they blocked it with signage rather than a physical barrier. They haven't put gates on any of the passageway at all.
They threaten to do so though, don't they?
But their stance has been, they are happy for that passageway to remain open and free of access to the public. They will close it once a year to protect their position in relation to public right of way. If there are antisocial behaviour issues or security issues, they will reconsider that based on the advice they had from the police about the use of the passageway. If that were the case, and I remember we met probably in 2010 with Frank Harris from Synagogue, talked about this. They said if for reasons of antisocial behaviour or other reasons, access had to be controlled with the gate, they were more than happy to work with people who have access or require access to continue giving access by way of numerical keypads and that nature. If the decision of the county is that it's recognised as public right of way, they'll abide by that.
But why, in setting up a contract for sale for that land, did you reserve the right to use that passageway for council staff only and not for the public?
Well, I wasn't here at the time. I was in the lead up to that. I was involved. We reserved the right for the benefit of the council. There was discussion about having to make a public right of way, which the county have to recognise, not the city council, and that is the application that's now being considered.
But this
at
was
the same
common
time,
land you sold.
Simon Pugh's addressed that with you.
Yes, he has.
He's
It was
answered.
common land and you sold it by mistake.
No, so I think
If we could just let the officer finish, otherwise it becomes a conversation between you and him and everybody's just looking at it. So it's kind of becomes, we could be at home basically and watch it on Richard's video later. So if the officer just finishes first and then we'll come back to you to have a chance to make some comments.
And then the other thing that we did at the same time was look to improve the access to the common from Newmarket Road. We've now put a drop curb in, we've improved the vehicle access to the common from the top end. We've got a very nice bespoke fabricated gate there. We have parking off-road before the gate for people to access the common. So that was done at the same time to address some of the issues of the access as well. So the synagogue have taken a pragmatic approach so far, working with the community to say, we will continue to make access for throughout the year, apart from one day. We've improved the accesses at both Newmarket Road and the bottom end of that part of the common as well. And I think if there are any issues with the synagogue about blocking that access, I think it needs a conversation with them to say, what are the issues, how can we make this work for local residents who have used that access for a considerable period of time. And I don't think there's been any occasion other than that one day when the access has been blocked.
Do you want to come back, Dick, or...?
I'll let others speak.
Okay.
Well, if it is to remain as a right-of-way, how come they put up a sign at both ends of that little passageway saying private, no public right-of-way? Well, I've got a photo of it here.
But they have said all along, they will recognise it's a public right of way if the county recognise it's a public right of way until such time their legal advice is they will put signage up to say the passageway is not a public right of way. However, they have not hindered access through that apart from one day a year.
But is it legal for them to put up a notice to say no public right of way when it is a right of way? It's common land.
It's not common land.
Well, it's
No,
not
because
now.
you sold it and then we've had less than an apology from the council for this outrage.
Can we just keep order, please?
An apology,
Sorry,
sorry,
can we
Mr.
just
Chair,
keep
an
order?
apology
Sorry,
would be
sorry,
nice.
did I call on you to speak?
No, you didn't.
I don't think I did. So
Well,
can we just keep order,
I thought
please?
to join in.
Can we just keep order? And we run the risk of the whole of the 30 minutes being covered by this issue, which, to be fair to other people here, I don't want to happen. I think one idea maybe for the group of residents who clearly have some concerns to come together with officers and perhaps myself as chair in a separate meeting to actually just sit down and have another discussion in relation to it and see what progress can be made.
No.
Because I don't think we are going to get very far this evening. Councillor Gillespie.
I just want to support this and say that the loss of public land is a really important issue. It's being felt all over the city, like the report about Alan Brigham outside the Cineworld being told that he wasn't allowed to stand there and show people the area. It's probably worth adding to the records that the application to make this passageway recognised as common land and public right of way has been received and it's in the queue to be looked at, but it's going to take about 18 months because there's only one person in the team.
It's also a very long queue, it's been there some time, I think. Basically. So if I can suggest that I don't really want to take any more points on this particular question, but if I can suggest afterwards we arrange a time to sit down as in terms of group of residents, officers, and I'm certainly happy to join that discussion. Sorry, the second question that you had, Dick, was in relation to the parking of the cars. Again, it's an issue that has been raised in this forum, certainly a number of occasions. A number of us have been intimately involved in the past, trying to find a solution. I have a written answer from Alistair Wilson, but I think what may be best, because again, it's an important issue, it's an issue that is ongoing, is that, and I don't want to push it to one side, is perhaps we arrange for a separate meeting with Alistair to actually go through what precisely is happening in relation to addressing this issue. I have a written response which basically most probably doesn't get you much further than what you most probably know already in relation to the council's position. So if that's okay on that...
I just ask one question then.
Sure.
Is it up to the legal department in Cambridge City Council to decide whether or not to prosecute offenders?
In my experience, it shouldn't be. It should be basically at the end, ultimately officers give advice and politicians take decisions.
Absolutely right.
That's the way it should be.
So that seems not to be happening. Yeah.
Well, that's why we should sit down and actually try and resolve it. Councillor Dick.
I would just like to put on the record my frustration on this one as well, because a lot of councillor time has also been expended in trying to get this parking issue fixed. In particular, former Councillor Andrea Reiner led an enormous exercise with council lawyers and the rest to get us the legal platform by which we could take action against parking to do with Fort St George. And it's an enormous frustration that we got there, but there is absolutely no attempt to enforce it. It's completely wasted effort if we don't do something about that. And I would look to put on record that this really needs to be taken further. Otherwise, hours and hours of professional work is just completely down the drain.
Perhaps what we should do is, again, have a separate discussion outside this meeting, perhaps with ward councillors and also the executive councillors. Again, I'm happy to attend that meeting, and we'll put that as an action point between now and the next meeting, and we should actually have it as a discussion point in the next meeting as well. Okay, so we have another question on Midsummer Common. We won't take that now, we'll come back just to give other people a chance to ask questions. So the next question I have is from Bev Nicholson. Bev here. Hi, Bev, do you want to ask your questions or?
I'm going to miss one out because I notice it's actually answered in the minutes of the previous meeting, which is handy. But I'm going to ask do you not want me to ask my question about related to Midsummer Common? You want me to ask me the one about the crossing?
Well, there is actually another question from another member of the public, so we'll let them ask that question, shall we? That brings you down to the Queen's Road one, doesn't it?
Definitely got. I did have 3. I've got 2
so
now.
P-pods. You had 4 on
No,
my
that's
list.
later.
P-pods later.
People's
The
definitely
recycling bins on
on
Parker's Peak, so hopefully the minutes should have addressed that.
Yeah.
And
I've
the
got
Queen's
another-
Road crossing we've not addressed, and the widening of the pass on Midsummer Common, there's another question in relation to that. So if we take your question together with the other question a little later on, is that okay?
Right, okay, got you.
So Queen's Road crossing is the one.
Right. Who knows how far we'll get with this one? What with the ERPs being what they are, anyway. From the college top, there's a King's Road crossing from John's College back gate essentially to their car park, fairly close to the little mini roundabout, not that far away, just sort of a zebra. It's a non-signal crossing anyway. And the approach to it coming from the back towards Westminster College has always got muddy. There's a bit of, the grass should be sort of in a nice sort of square shape. I've got a photo of the grass has sort of been worn away and the path gets flooded after it's rained. I just wondered if there was any possibility, any creative possibility perhaps, of improving it at some point. Because that would be nice.
Okay, so I do have a response from John Richards, who's project leader of Street and Open Spaces within the City Council. He says that he thinks that there is a low point on the edge of the worn grass and the verge in the asphalted area where the water congregates. County Council Highway Service are aware of it, and we understand that they haven't given it an urgent priority due to their resourcing pressures. However, they do operate on an annual programme of highway improvements and maintenance, and although the applications have just ended for the next cycle, he will raise it again with them when it comes round, so to put it forward as a potential project. So I think it illustrates some of the funding pressures that all authorities are under, particularly the county at the moment. Very good. So if we now turn to... Oh, sorry, yes?
Evan Laughlin from Highways. How are you? If I could just ask the lady to put that through our contact centre.
Yeah.
We'll certainly have a look at that. I mean,
okay.
Queen's Road is inspected by us monthly because it is a principal road. We do work to intervention levels now, so there's a numerical value, if you like, which will indicate to us if we have to do the work or how quickly we have to do the work. If I can give you that number and you can report that through to us, we'll inspect that and feed back to you on our findings.
Many thanks. Okay, so we now move on to a couple of other topics. This relates to the city deal. And we have two questions in relation to the city deal. The first question is Alison Dick. Alison Hine. Do you want to read your question out, or shall I read it? So Alison's question is, given that Manningley Rise is allegedly the worst congested entry point to the city, I would like to know whether, in preparation for the public consultation, any specific independent survey has been carried out to help understand who uses it at peak times and their ultimate destination, as this would and should inform decisions on prioritising use of city deal funding and maximise cost benefit. For those members of the audience who may not be aware, part of the city deal action programme, work programme, is potentially looking at a bus route from the west coming into the city. And there are currently 3 options on the table, 1A, 1B, 1C, and those options are going out for consultation, I believe, on the 12th of October. So is there anyone present, and I'm looking to Councillor Bick, because Councillor Bick with another hat happens to be Chair of the City Assembly, who perhaps could give some response. Councillor Bick?
All those things are true about me, except that I don't have the answer to that question. I would certainly have tried to get it if I'd known the question was going to be there, but if I could commit to find it out for you and let you know.
Perhaps email it to you.
Absolutely, yeah, no problem.
Good. Okay, so we now move on to a second question in relation to the city deal, which is from Penny Heath. Penny.
Okay, 2 questions.
Yeah. Sorry, you have 2 bits going.
Mike. Oh, sorry, I'll take the mic. The actual consultation questionnaire, my question was, who writes the questions, and more importantly, do our elected representatives, i.e. our local councillors, get to scrutinise the questions? Before it goes out.
Just as clarification, is this in relation to the bus route?
To the city, in relation to the city deal, these are called, they're not actually options, they're proposals.
Yeah.
It's a bit vaguer, and it's an open book still, but it's quite important how questions phrased.
So this is for the bus route?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it could be, would you like a new transport system for Cambridge? And you'd say yes, but it could be a little bit more, it's a very important science, asking the right question for intelligent answers.
Councillor Dick, do you think you might have, maybe?
It's a good question. And I am not one of the people who would be involved in that. Who would be, I don't know. But again, I can only offer to try and get that information for you. But I take your point. The way things are put to people is quite influential on how they respond. So if I could have your question by email.
So I have Councillor Nsinga at the back, County Councillor Lucy Nsinga. She might be able to give a bit more colour as well.
I can let you know that councillors are not involved in writing consultations, I'm afraid, and I think given the timescales it would be quite complicated to make sure that everybody who might like to have a say does get to have a say. Things keep getting delayed anyway, so we will not have any choice on how the wording of those questions is done. There are occasions when we get asked, but I'm reasonably certain that we will not get asked this time. In response to what I think is probably behind your question, I do know that the County Council would like people to respond as freely as they can do to the current consultation on the bus route and on the potential routes. They are suggesting 3 vague ideas, and they really are only vague ideas from the Council at this stage. And anybody is very welcome to put in other ideas and other suggestions. I think it's important that residents should feel that they don't need to simply respond to the questions on the consultation. I haven't seen it yet, but I very much hope that the council will be asking for sort of open-ended responses. And if you don't see spaces for open-ended responses, please make them anyway, because it is at the moment a very open-ended and open for discussion debate at this stage. There will be a stage when it will become much less open and less kind of flexibility in the responses, but at this point, please say anything you would like to.
Okay, and you had a second component to that question.
Take the mic. Again, it's about the city deal, and it's maybe a bit premature at this stage, but obviously some people are very concerned about the impact on conservation area, open spaces. And so my question is the unique highways project, like the city deal proposals, subject to the same material planning considerations other developers have to work to if they are building in a conservation area?
That's a very good question, actually. I'm not sure anyone here is qualified to. Councillor B. I'm sorry about this.
Any use of geography? I don't have this answer either.
I don't think
Again, I would love to help if I can get the information.
It's such a fundamental
Yes.
you've got to know before anything further.
I think we'll take that away and Councillor Kelly.
The proposal is that the planning will be delegated to the Joint Development Control Committee, and therefore anything going in front of that has to meet the same requirements, because it's been proposed that is part of the delegation as part of the city deal, that it needs a governance of planning, and it's been proposed that it will be using that structure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just for the clarity in terms of the public, what that committee is, because it's the joint planning committee of the two authorities. Yeah, just so that people are aware, because we do use a lot of jargons. So. Yeah.
And that was delegated through the Economy and Environment Committee.
Okay. Good. Very good. So moving now to another topic which could be just as controversial, and most probably is, Richard Price. Richard? Would you like to...
Filming, please.
No filming, yeah, that needs to be respected.
Richard Price, Market Ward resident. My questions are about air quality in Cambridge. It seems that vehicle manufacturers have been deceiving us about emissions. Cambridge is notoriously congested with traffic, stationary and slow moving for much of the day.
Excuse me.
Just turn the camera away from the resident.
And switch
I think
it
you
off.
did indicate, Richard, that he wasn't keen on I'm happy with you. My case.
The council's website, the City Council's website, says that nitrogen dioxide levels are, and I'm quoting, routinely monitored across the city. And it identifies certain areas, and again I quote, severely affected by air pollution with high levels of nitrogen dioxide. So my first question is this the only component of vehicle exhaust that is measured? What about particulates? Because those are particularly concerning as far as diesel emissions are concerned. The website, the City Council's website, refers to an quality action plan and the local transport plan 2006 to 2011. And it says that the air quality action plan is due to be updated in 2013-14. So my question is, has it been updated and or will it be reviewed in light of the revelations about Volkswagen? Does the County Council, as the highway authority, have a part to play in this, and if not, why not? And finally, for the sake of the health of city centre residents, isn't it time to introduce congestion charging and electric buses in this most congested of cities?
That's it's an excellent question, but quite a complex question in terms of answers. So,
I can take part of it. The County Council absolutely does have a role in it, even more so now that public health, which I think is a good thing, is back with the County Council and back under local authority control. So I will endeavour with my colleagues to understand and communicate how the county is involved in that plan and how public health is involved in that as well.
okay, Councillor Vick.
Thank you. The last point that Richard made in relation to this, clearly the toxic air emissions that one would be most concerned about here are considered to be chiefly influenceable by transport, and that shouldn't surprise anyone, I think. The relationship between the City Council, which does the measuring, and other agents that cause that, prompts a very close relationship with the County Council in relation to buses. But clearly there is a need for a wider traffic management approach within the city. This is another aspect of the city deal, which I hope the public will be hearing about soon. There are a variety of different potential methods of controlling traffic in the city, and many of these have been featured in the local press over the past few months. There is going to be a need for the city deal authorities to decide what mix of those they intend to deploy. I am very concerned that should be a transparent approach, so that the public do get the chance to express a preference based on good information of all the options. I certainly believe that congestion charging should be one of those options, as it does have a track record elsewhere. So apart from what already happens in working with the County Council on buses, I think there is on the way a big consultation, a very big consultation, which will be very controversial, I think, about how traffic in general is managed within the city.
And Councillor Vick, just for clarification, that's part of what's called the City Centre Access Study. That's kind of a precursor to that. So for members of the public, there is an exercise being taking place at the moment where there'll be a consultant doing an analysis of the current traffic movements within the city, in the historic core area principally, and there's a baseline document that's already available, which is very interesting. It's about 250 to 300 pages long, and based off that baseline, the consultants during the next few months will come forward with a piece of analysis in terms of potential proposals, which then will go out to public consultation, I think in the early part of next year. Is that correct? Have I said everything correctly? I'm not.
I think you have. I think the issue is really what scope there is for that public consultation. My own my own anxiety is that there shouldn't be a suppressing of any of the options before a public consultation, and the body that within the City Field I chair, which is known as the Assembly, has decided at its last meeting to conduct an investigation in public of these different options as a means of guiding the board, which really makes the decisions in the City Deal about how to proceed on the public consultation. But we feel that there's been quite enough of everyone reading in the paper people's ideas for managing congestion, but so far the City Deal hasn't offered a means of synthesising and bringing this to a decision. And I'm very keen that we do that. We do that with full involvement.
Okay, so very quickly, I have Bev, I have Councillor Gillespie, and then I have Cambridge Bid. And I have two more questions which I would quite like to try and get in, and we're already running over by 5 minutes. So I'll give us another 5 minutes and then I'll call it time on the open forum. So Claire, very quickly, what's your comment?
Councillor Vick might have partially covered this, but how does the access study tie in with the greater City Deal? How do they sort of how do you make sure you don't end up with two completely different options, or a number of completely separate options for tackling congestion? How do you make sure you end up with like a bunch of options that are all agreed upon to consult upon, if you see what I mean?
Okay, shall we just go to Councillor Gillespie and then the City Bid team, and then we can always come back to Councillor Vick very quickly. I'm sure Councillor Herbert might be interested in taking on the question later. Councillor Herbert is the chair of the City Deal Board, by the way. Welcome this evening, Councillor Herbert. Councillor Gillespie.
Just some points about the City Council's air quality team, which is half a person, I think, working on two different areas. They're aware that vehicles are designed to pass tests and not to produce low emissions on the road. There's been a major academic report about that, showing that it's true and that the EU standards are not good at reducing air pollution on the road. They're focusing on updating the taxi fleet as a priority, and that's something they've identified as the thing with the most potential to reduce NO2 and I think particulate matter emissions. So they're consulting with the taxi fleet at the minute about measures like getting them to use electric vehicles, rapid charge points being rolled out around the city. That's quite hopeful, I think, and they're the lead authority for funding on that. The County Council, I think, is the lead authority on a proposal to do a similar thing with buses, the second highest priority for reducing emissions. If you think the emissions fixing thing is a scandal, bear in mind that DEFRA have released a consultation on air quality standards in the UK an hour before Jeremy Corbyn was announced as the Labour leader. So I think that's the first time that a major government consultation has been announced on a Saturday, but it does look fishy. So if you respond to that, I think the City Council needs to respond to that as well.
Just want to, very quickly, I want to get the MP. Was there anything else?
Consultation charge, yes, absolutely, I agree. And let's have a car-free day as well, like Paris.
Hello, good evening everyone. Over quickly from Cambridge Bid. Just in response to you, Mr. Price, to let you know anything else, I'll talk about it a bit later in the presentation, but Cambridge Bid, we are looking at a project to reduce the volume of commercial vehicles coming into the city centre, reducing last mile deliveries through urban consolidation and an infrastructure of electric vehicles making deliveries in the city centre. So in layman's terms and in short, to try and reduce the number of lorries and vans that are coming into Cambridge. We're hoping to pilot a scheme next year. It's ambitious, requires a lot of stakeholders to come together, but we have a meeting next week with Councillor Herbert actually, and other traffic generators, shopping centres, colleges, to look at how we can bring this to fruition. Thanks.
So I have two more questions, which we've unfortunately run out of time. One is in relation to widening the paths on Midsummer Common. It's about consultation. The fact it's not on a website, we can certainly take that up.
That's why the only place you can look at
Yeah,
them
no,
is in the
as I said, we haven't got time, Mr. Rosensteel, to take a question, but I will follow up. And then sorry, can I just
Could I just clarify that? Because I've been in touch already with Russian Stewart about that. And the website is going up, and he will let us know when it's up.
Thank you very much. That's very good. Thank you. So I wasn't taking the question actually. I was just saying that I was going to basically take that forward outside the context. And then there was another question relating to Auckland Road allotments, which again I think would be very useful for an officer to actually attend the next meeting to actually give you the answer.
Yes.
So that you can actually hear it from most probably not only the senior officer in the operations area, which is Alistair Wilson, but also the senior legal officer within the council. So apologies we've run out of time, but I think it would be more productive for that question if we took it in the next meeting.
As long as the question is on the agenda.
Yes.
I don't know how we take it forward, but
Yes,
get
we'll make sure it's on the agenda. Very good, many thanks everyone for that. We now turn to the next item on the agenda, which is item 6, which is policing and safer neighbourhoods. And I think that's going to be introduced by a combination of officers and the police. So if they'd like to step forward. Okay, so we're very, unfortunately Sergeant Wood is not able to attend, but we have Inspector Matt Johnson, so that's more better, maybe, or two, I don't know. So if I hand over to Inspector Johnson and he'll quickly walk us through the piece and then we can open up for questions and so forth.
Okay, good evening everybody. I'm Matt Johnson, I'm the Inspector for the neighbour teams in the city centre. Normally I'd prefer that the area committees that you have your sergeants here. Kevin Nissick, who you normally see in Ian Wood. Kevin Nissick is the Western Sergeant, Ian is the Sergeant for the city centre. Kevin's on leave, I've been allowed to have some holiday sometimes. So Kevin's on leave, so he's never going to be here, and so Ian was going to present. Ian's had a bit of a crisis at home, so I've come here. I'm somewhat under the weather, but I'm sort of wrapped through, but I apologise for the coughing and spluttering as we go through. I'll start off by going through the 3 priorities that you set at the last meeting. The first one was tackling antisocial behaviour and alcohol-related violent crime, particularly in the market ward in the city centre. I think one of the key things that to acknowledge very early on is that tackling the ASB and violent crime, particularly that linked to the nighttime economy around the weekends, isn't something that the police sort of do in isolation. And one of the key partners that often get forgotten is the street passengers who come out on patrols with us on Fridays and Saturdays and offer essentially sort of like a refuge in one of the churches and offer hydration and sort of warmth and things like that, which stops people perhaps drinking to excess. It stops some of the people putting themselves at risk and things like that. So we've continued to work with them. We engage them with our briefings on a Friday and Saturday, and so we've been patrolling the pastors. We've got an ongoing alcohol-related violent crime group, which meets every couple of months. We've got a number of key projects around the city centre. One of the things we're trying to move forward at the moment with is we've got a number of partners involved, including the City Council, the CCTV, management and presence of people that run the CCTV in the city come down. We've also got representatives from the Security Industries Authority, which is the SIA Doorman. So we're actually working with the doorman to try and sort of prevent issues outside the clubs and the bars and things like that. We're currently looking into other sort of projects around what we can do to support the door staff as well with their work. Ian Wood, who's the Ian Wood, who's the sergeant for the city centre, has been contacting a lot of the other major cities around the country to find out if they, what other projects are ongoing and seeing what best practice we can steal from other places and see what we can implement next. So rather than trying things to find out that don't work, perhaps we can pick up on what does work and what has worked in other similar places. So that's something Ian's been doing, unfortunately, because Ian's sort of became unavailable at short notice. I haven't had a full update on where we are with that. Over the summer, we've conducted a number of patrols on the green spaces because we're mindful that during the summer people tend to sort of gravitate to the open spaces and stay drinking and things like that. So they were conducted over the summer, particularly around ASB in the city centre. Again, had issues around Sussex Street, locally known as Spanish Corner. It tends to be a place where Spanish students or Spanish people in the Spanish community congregate, and this seems to be a historic thing that has gone on for a number of years. We've been trying to work with people we could identify within the Spanish community, so with the international colleges, things like that, to try and explain the impact. Going back a number of years, the buildings around Sussex Street were mainly offices above, so perhaps if it had been going on, it hadn't been the issue that it is now that a lot of those offices have been converted into accommodation. The other thing that we've been concentrating on around the ASB is with the street life and the street drinkers. Working with the City Council and also the outreach team, some of the support charities to actually pick out the individuals. That's been, seems to have had quite an increase over the summer months of an influx of people into the city centre, so we've been working with them. We've had some successes. Success means different things to different people. To some of our community, that's been sort of diversion and support work, and for others, it's meant us getting them into prison. Which the prisons enabled them to have some sort of support, continued support, and a break from the availability of alcohol. And it's also offered some respite for some of the community and the businesses that they've been covered. So excuse me a second.
I think they're going to bed.
Linda's going to sing a song whilst I'm sorry about that. So that was the first priority that we set. Done sort of a lot of work around the ASB and particularly around the nighttime economy. It's a work in progress. We're not going to solve the nighttime economy issues overnight. The nighttime economy is one of the things that's great about Cambridge. It's a destination city. People come here, for the vibrant nightlife that we've got. We're not trying to kill it off. We just want to make it better for everybody. So that's a work in progress. The second priority was around the pump touts. That was suggested essentially on the history of the aggressive selling that we have from some of the unlicensed pump touts and some of the issues that we've experienced over the previous years and previous summers. Worked extensively with City Council, with Camden Services and other enforcement agencies, including HMRC, Revenue Customs, and we've conducted a number of joint patrols. We've also supported the engineering work that City Council has carried out around Garrett Hostel Lane, which is one of the places that the unlicensed pump touts were operating from, so that's made things more difficult for them to operate. We've ensured that any complaints that we received about sort of any aggressive selling or any sort of harassment would be followed up fully. So that we could sort of maximise any opportunities for any prosecutions. So that's gone on, and we've had quite an extensive sort of local media campaign, some posters and bits like that, and some targeted work around, particularly around the university, because a lot of the people that the unlicensed people are recruiting are the students who then suddenly find themselves sort of working for some less than reputable companies. So that's the pump outs in the main. We want to close. Anyone else want to comment any further on the pump outs?
At the moment, we're gathering evidence towards a public spaces protection order, the possibility of doing that in time for Easter of next year, which falls at the end of March. We are still getting quite a few complaints around the rude punt touting or aggressive punt touting, and also still the operations, illegal operations are going on at the moment, but we're coming at it from lots of different angles.
Just explain what that means, just in terms of what the implication of public space protection would be.
At the moment, we haven't gotten down to the actual detail, but I think it will be probably around prohibiting touting in certain areas. That's probably where we go with it, but we have to look at the evidence we have first.
And that's actually the sale of the tickets. Yes.
They don't actually sell the tickets on the streets because that's illegal to exchange money on the streets. But this is about
the enticement.
Enticement,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The third priority that we set was around road safety, which was a sort of all-encompassing, which covered quite a lot of bases really. Particularly sort of around cycling issues and also speeding issues. But one of the key things, we've had a lot of progress this year, particularly over the last few months with Speedwatch, which is where yourselves have been getting involved in the monitoring of speeding vehicles, feeding the information back into the police, and us then writing to people and then following up. At this stage, within the city, we've got 23 volunteers now operating teams of 3. There's ongoing interest, which we've sort of got quite a lot of interest. We've got probably more interest at the moment than we can sort of manage, which is really positive because we're harnessing that, and we're now looking to actually recruit somebody to be a coordinator for those volunteers. So it's currently we have one coordinator at the moment who is works basically for the county. We're now trying to extend, so we can see if we can get a volunteer coordinator for the just for the city itself, because we do have a lot.
Can you just tell us the areas you've got people volunteering to do Speedwatch?
Essentially, I've got people from across the whole city.
Well, in this particular ward, Castle Ward.
There are people. Well, the way it would work is that you get volunteers. Often, what we would do is we would say that you work in your own area, or if there's only perhaps 2 of you, you need to work in groups of 3. You would then look to join somebody from one of the different areas, but we've got representation from each of the areas. This stage, the ones that have been actively working has been one on Huntston Road, Trumpington Road and Tenson Road. I appreciate 2 of those aren't in the area here, but
Is that Councillor Holt on Huntington Road? No? I'd just be interested to know if there is a Speedwatch project.
Yes, yeah. And unfortunately Ian Wood has some information that he has that with him, so I can't give you sort of detailed breakdown, but we've got a lot, as I said, a lot of interest. That's been really quite positive. Where we've identified sort of persistent offenders, although the community speed watches, it's an education tool, because people come around the corner, see some people there with yellow jackets and the flashing signs and things like that. We follow it up where we identify people who are persistently coming around the corner. We've been following that type of enforcement. And whilst not in this specific area, in other areas where I've run it before in the county, we tend to get people and get some message across.
Okay.
So
Councillor Arnold, is this specific on this?
Well, I'm really interested to discover this, actually.
Okay.
Enforcement, I'm also interested to know that you are saying that you enforce, because my problem with the HGVs on Huntington Road was enforcement, and thanks to Mike Todd-Jones and Arbery, I realised that the police now partner Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Bedfordshire, and that apparently it's Stevenage, Hertfordshire, who are responsible for the camera. speed. That's what I've been told.
They're managed centrally from the three counties.
And it's only they who will trigger the enforcement. Is that correct or not?
No, the safety camera units all work from, are sort of managed from Stevenage. They're not deployed from Stevenage. And you talk about fixed cameras, the deployment of the mobile camera vans is under fairly tight sort of criteria. My teams will go out, as they have been doing, and will do handheld laser enforcement. So there's lots of different tiers, but ultimately every ticket, well, I don't issue tickets anymore, but every traffic offence report that we issue, again, goes back to Peterborough, goes back to Stevenage. Yeah. So it's managed centrally, but it's not Stevenage officers, or it's not people travelling out from Stevenage to here.
But are they the ones who determine you going out to enforce?
No.
No. So who does that?
So hopefully we might be able to do that this evening. That's our priority,
right.
for example.
Yeah. I mean, I will determine where the enforcement is needed and where it's appropriate as well, because often it will be a case of perception as opposed to an actual speeding thing. But anyway, that's locally, for local handheld enforcement, that would be something that me and my team would largely take primacy for. The safety camera units, the fixed sites such as the one down the bottom of the road here, sorry, up the road, so the fixed sites and the deployment of the mobile safety vans, they're managed, and they're far more geared up to those sites where the people have been killed or seriously injured and it's related to speed.
Okay, so our challenge, our target this evening is we have to have 3 recommendations for the next phase, and I think you're indicating that the nighttime economy could be one of those. That's what you seem to be indicating on page 37. And then others to be decided by the area committee. So what I'd like to do is, I'm happy to take some very brief...
Very, very briefly, with the road safety as well, the other thing that's is obviously we've had a large focus on cycles. I've actually got a team of specials who have now been sort of actually going out on push bikes as like a little squad, and have actually been stopping people, particularly red light jumpers on bikes. So it's been quite positive to see. And also we had some complaints around Parkside School. The school kids all coming out on mass on bikes in the immediate area. So again, that's something that we've had engaged with the school and done that.
Okay, sorry about that. So, some very quick comments for the next few minutes, and then very quickly I want to move on to recommendations that people may have in terms of for the next period for officers to focus on. So, we'll start here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
You want to just use the mic, just so that everybody can hear?
Thank you very much.
Councillor Gillespie.
August 2010 was when the 20-mile limit came in Race Course Newmarket Road and parts of the city centre. And we've been battling for 5 years to get the police to do some enforcement. It appears that you haven't done any enforcement in the last priority setting period. I think from what you've written here, you're basically saying, well, we'll do it if we want to, but you didn't actually say that you actually had done any, and it appears, so I assume that you haven't done any. Now, I would welcome if the council set this as a priority, because we've been waiting 5 years for this. We did have an officer in 2012, I think it was, who came out from the north of the county, and he enforced a 30 limit in 20-mile-an-hour zone. So to my knowledge, it's never been any serious enforcement in Maid's Causeway, to take an example, of the 20 limit. I just don't understand why are the police so dead set against this. Is there any point in setting this as a police priority if it's not actually going to happen?
Well, you're talking about a specific road.
Yes, but it wasn't a priority, it wasn't Maid's Causeway, it was the city centre 20 miles an hour area. But I was speaking specifically about Maid's Causeway because that's where I live.
Yeah, no, but we have done enforcement. I've got part of the city centre teams, that the student officers that come into the police service, they spend some time being trained, they then work on a shift with the tutor, they then spend about 3 months on the city centre where they're sort of independent, and that's where they go out. One of the key things that they get trained is is in speed enforcement. So I have like a rolling team of very keen officers, albeit student officers, but fully fledged constables that come in, and they would be the ones that would train, and they would pick up. We have done enforcement in the 20s.
But there's
so it has done speed enforcement.
There's no stats here. You mentioned, all sorts of things to do with cycling and so on, but no stats about speeding.
I don't collate them, no, and what I can't do is break them down for wards, because as colleague mentioned, it's managed by Stevenage. We don't.
So we'll never know.
No, unless I specifically chose to, which I'm not going to, unless I specifically chose to record things, I'm not going to start recording data for the sake of recording data.
So if council set a priority of 20 mile an hour enforcement, we'll never know whether you've done any.
Well, I'd like to think that people have seen this out.
It's a fair point, and we'll come back to that when we're setting priorities. So I have Councillor Gillespie, I have Councillor Gearing, Councillor Pick, Mr Price, Mr Rosensteel. So a lot of people who want to have a question. So Councillor Gillespie.
On planting, the Executive Councillor was asked at the last council meeting why planting wasn't being addressed. She said that the current bylaw regarding it wasn't effective and people could avoid prosecution by just not getting their address. So I want to check that the PSPO will not have that shortcoming, and also want to, on the Garrett Hospital Lane point, just say that I think it's a shame police effort is going into protecting a commercial monopoly, which is what I think is happening on the river.
Okay, we'll get answers from the representatives once we've quickly taken the questions. Councillor Gearing.
I note in your report on page 33 a significant increase in burglary dwelling in dwellings. My question concerns a point that we have later on the agenda. If the county council really switches off all the lights in the side streets, from a purely policing point of view, how do you see that? And what are your plans to address the burglary issue, especially here in Newnham and Castle?
Okay, we'll come back to that. So it's the second one. Now we have Mr Price, Mr Rosensteel, and this gentleman in the red jumper. Cooper, sorry. Oh, sorry. Who am I going to first?
Mr Price.
Mr Price. I jumped the council bit, so we'll let some real people of the public have some questions, and then we'll come back to the council. Sorry, council.
Thank you for those open comments. My question, really, my request is that cycling should be retained as a priority. I think it's wonderful that Cambridge has so many cyclists, really is, particularly in view of the problems with air quality. But, and it's a small minority of cyclists, are continuing to behave dangerously. My wife, at 2 o'clock this afternoon, was almost felled by a cyclist on the corner by the Cambridge University Press bookshop. And it's cyclists going too fast, taking the wrong way down one-way streets, cycling fast along pavements, jumping red traffic lights, all of these things, ignoring pedestrian crossings. And it really is a discouragement to pedestrians. I think the older one gets, the more timid one becomes. Because cyclists can be very aggressive. I'm sure it's a minority, but I think it would be helpful if some very serious examples could be made of some of these people, so that the message gets across.
Okay, Councillor Rosensteel, sorry, Mr Rosensteel. Sorry.
I just wanted to query a couple of things. One was, actually both wrote something. One is this statement on page 32 about cycling on the pavement in Parkside, just to check that police are aware that a large part of the Parks East side of pavement on Parkside is dual use, although it's appallingly badly signposted, partly due to the contribution of Balfour Beatty, who took signs away when they changed the streetlights and put them back again, and they've still not gone back. And the other point was about cycling. There was a reference to cyclists, enforcement of cyclists jumping red lights. I've previously raised concern that there are endless motor cars jumping red lights at the roundabout between Newmarket Road and Elizabeth Way. I used to go to work through that roundabout, and there wasn't a day past that I didn't see somebody jump a red light, and it's just the same when I go past it now, going shopping. It's much the worst red light jumping location in Cambridge.
So I think
previously I raised it as a way of the police getting their statistics up, but actually it is dangerous.
Very good point. Perhaps what we should do is perhaps expand that out to all road users jumping traffic lights.
You did have a policy which covered the
So we'll come back to that in recommendation. Mr. Cooper, yes, and then Councillor Vick, and then I have, do I have any other people? Yeah, Penny Heath, and the gentleman at the back.
Well, the question I really wanted to ask, I think, has been partly dealt with by the councillor over there, but I do want to know that the police are going to be involved in the decision about turning off street lights between 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. I think that's a matter of great concern, and I just want to make sure that both the City Council and the County Council consult the police and take notice of what they're saying.
And we have an item later on the agenda in relation to that, but the police officers will respond in terms of their comments. We'll just take two more and then we'll let you give the answers. Penny Heath.
Now, I'm just quite interested about the punt tax. I hadn't realised it's illegal to exchange money on the street. I'm go market shopping all the time, and two things. One, I never ever see police presence. You just don't see a policeman there. And I was the other day, people exchanging money for punt tax. I have to bite elbows through punt tax every time I go into central town. And I go down Garrett Hostel Lane. I know every trick in the book and all the things they get up to. But it would just be very nice to see police. And so if you do see something like that, who do you report it to? You know, I look left and right and I just shrug my shoulders. So an email or a telephone number would be very helpful.
Enforcement in relation to punt tax. Councillor Vick, I'm sorry, I forgot you.
The reference is made about speeding to the fact that that there is now a national driver offender retraining scheme applicable to 20 miles an hour. And that's really to be welcomed, because there are many the long-standing members of this committee and participants will remember that the absence of that was a reason why enforcement was difficult in the past, because the practice of the police was to assign people to a retraining scheme if they were responsible for a first offence. And so it was felt to be unfair if there was no retraining scheme for 20 mile an hour, therefore they kind of nothing happened to them. So it's to be welcome that's available, but I'd like really, if we could have confirmation that that is accessible to the police locally as a means of dealing with offenders on this, because saying it's a national scheme doesn't immediately tell me that we've got it up and running locally, and if we haven't, we really ought to, because enforcement action we should have won't be very effective if we're only going to go around the old circle all over again.
I have the gentleman at the back, and I'm going to let the police officer...
Quick, I'd just like to second the support for antisocial cycling.
Antisocial cycling, right. Okay, very good. Some interesting questions. Shall we start off with the PSPO point?
If you're witnessing money exchanging on the streets for tickets, we weren't aware that that was ever happening. We know that they go to shops sometimes or cafes to do the business of exchanging the money. And then you can report it to us at the Safer Communities section. You can email that in, or you can call us on the reception number and it will be put through to us. But you can, if you email it, safer.communities@cambridge.gov.uk. And the more information that we have about who's doing it, if you can spot what company they are working for, if you can get some description of them, then that helps us with it is quite difficult to take enforcement, but it would help us, and it would also help us with gathering evidence towards the public spaces protection order as well.
And Councillor Gillespie's point was in relation to, I think, the Executive Councillor indicating from the previous meeting in relation to towns?
Not from the previous meeting, from the full council meeting.
Oh, full council meeting was it? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, she said that the bylaw which is in effect was not very useful at all.
Not very effective.
At securing prosecutions.
And how, I think Councillor Gillespie's question was, how is the PSPO more effective than the bylaw?
With the bylaw, we have to go to court and we have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the incident happened. It's quite difficult to do that and it's quite expensive to do it. With the Public Spaces Protection Order, we can issue fixed penalty notices for a breach of the order, and we can follow up on the fixed penalty notice, and it's the other, it's just left me at the moment, it's not beyond reasonable doubt, it's on the balance of probabilities. Yeah.
Okay. Next question was in relation to street lights, the proposal from the County Council to dim or switch off the street lights from, at the moment as I understand it, from midnight to 6 AM in certain parts of the city. And I think the question was from Councillor Gearing in relation to safety and community safety as a result of that.
I'm just going to jump back to it because part of the question from Councillor Gillespie was about the PSPO, that they could evade, sorry, not PSPO, about the bylaw, was that they could evade it but just by not giving their name and address. So that doesn't work for us because if they don't give their name and address, they get arrested. And they don't get released until they give us their name and address. So, I mean, I don't know what powers that the council's enforcement officers, and that might be an anomaly there, but certainly for the police officers and when we've been doing joint patrols, not an issue at all. We've had all the details that we needed. So anyway, coming back onto the burglary thing, there's a couple of questions around that. The first was, or taking logically, the first was, will the police be involved and will they be consulted? We've already had quite a lot of consultation ongoing. We've had the opportunity to sort of comment and give a view, so that's already been done. That's going back some time, so and that will feature as part of a discussion. Excuse me, a discussion a little later on. With regards to burglary specifically and lights, I think the key thing that people could do to protect themselves from being burgled is actually lock their back door. That is a significant issue for us at the moment, with people essentially just walking around trying to pull those door handles and try enough you'll find an empty one. So I'm less concerned about lighting than I am about people locking their back doors. The other thing is that one of the burglary series that we've had of late is actually daytime burglary, so when people are out at work. So yes, clearly there is a link to nighttime crime, but burglary and other serious offences don't just happen at night. So this isn't the be all and end all certainly, but there are far more steps that we can take to protect ourselves before we worry about whether the lights are going to be on.
And then I think there were a number of questions around cycling and cycling enforcement, and then perhaps broader in terms of road user enforcement around traffic lights. So, for example, I think jumping red traffic lights, also in terms of cars coming into the red box where the cyclists, that's quite a common feature, I think, on some of the junctions. Certainly Lensfield Road Junction, I see that quite a lot of the time. And perhaps that's something we don't answer, but actually as part of the recommendations decide whether or not that's a recommendation for you. And then we had the speeding, 20 miles an hour, and the NDORS position. Is it possible for you to comment on that?
Right, the cycling, I know one of the things was mentioned was about Parkside. I'm very aware that there's a dual use on Parkside side. Yes, the issues were as they come out of the school, particularly on the police station side, where kids are sort of riding up and down. Although I have been guilty of sort of shouting at people to get on their bikes, only to realise that they are actually on a cycle path. So the signage isn't great. It could do with some of the markings could do with refresh. I know that's a discussion for somewhere else. But with regards to the cars jumping lights, obviously if we're in a position to stop a car that's gone through a light, it's going to get stopped and she's going to get stopped, and they are going to get reported for an offence. The difference with cyclists is that you don't have that big stick with the points on their licence, whereas the car drivers, dare I say it, are typically less inclined to do so because there is a real sort of threat. It's less so, which is why we've been targeting cyclists, and the complaints we've been getting have been about cyclists, not about car drivers. If it's something specific, then yeah, it's something we pick up. We've had road safety as a sort of a fairly wide, and we've picked up on a whole host of aspects of road safety. With regards to speeding, the indoors course, that has been one of the primary reasons that we've been reluctant to do speed enforcement in the 20s, is because of the unfairness that you're actually giving somebody significant fine and the points on their licence for perhaps doing 23, 24 miles an hour, 24 miles an hour and 20, whereas in any other circumstances in a different speed limit they would have the opportunity to do the course. The indoors course has now been redesigned and it's a separate course for 20-mile offenders. It is available in Cambridgeshire and it has been since September. So it's only just coming in Cambridge, but it is, or Cambridgeshire, but it is now available for us. So it's there. I think
that was it. Yeah, I had a quick question from Councillor Holland, and then is it quick, Mr. Lord? Yeah, but after Councillor Holland, then we have to give some recommendations to the officers. And whilst people just think about what those recommendations, it seems to me that it's something relating to traffic enforcement of traffic users at junctions, so not just cyclists, but also cars coming into the red boxes, and also the 20-mile-an-hour type issues, and then something around cycling enforcement in terms of lights, I think, because of the time of the year is very important, actually. So, Councillor Holland.
Yes, there are two comments, really, and thank you very much to the police officer who's obviously suffering from a very heavy cold. The taxis, actually, as a cyclist and a pedestrian in the city centre, the manoeuvres taxis make are, with complete disregard for cyclists and pedestrians at times, are incredibly dangerous. I know that's probably an impossible task, but to speak to licensing or somehow or other to emphasise to taxi drivers that they're not the only road users in the city centre. And secondly, about the pump touts, I go into the Guildhall virtually every morning and the Market Square, and the fact that there are touts with boards standing outside the doors of the Guildhall all around the Market Square, it's just extraordinary. That, I mean, what sort of message does that send? This is really for Linda. I know it's a very difficult thing, but the officer's saying that actually the police can enforce. And I think there's a sort of softly approach, but they basically stand in front of the door of the Guildhall, and I have to say, excuse me.
The act of standing there and obviously being a tout itself isn't an offence.
I understand all the complexity of it, but it is a message that the Guildhall is saying, you know, we're countenancing, they're everywhere. And now the season has ended, and they've had a really good year, I should think.
I think it is something in general. A lot of residents certainly have contacted me over the summer. I think they've recognised that it's got to the point now where it's just unbearable, basically. But not just for residents, but also most probably for tourists as well, basically. So we do need to fundamentally do something about it. And it's not actually the boats themselves, it's actually the touts on King's Parade and in that whole area.
It's the whole agent, I know, it's a
the whole
structure.
area, they're not just King's Parade anymore.
Yeah.
Mr. Lawson, very quickly.
Very quickly, yes. You said that you had a lot of complaints about bad cycling and cycling problems. How do you get those complaints, and how can we report bad motoring? I'm a motorist and a cyclist, so I'm not biased. So how should we use @CamCops using Twitter or email, or what's the best way? How can we get this data to you?
Right.
No, don't say
My
one
preferred
doesn't
thing is
work.
I'm confident that everybody in the room has signed up to the neighbourhood alert scheme. There is a reporting system in that. If you submit a report, and the only reason I say that is because you can fit more on that than you can on doing a Twitter or something like that. The other thing is I can actually come back to you, and it's not always appropriate, but if I need some more information, but certainly via the neighbourhood alert that has a reporting system. Historically, I've said phone 101, but I know life's too short.
Yeah,
agree. I'm not supposed to say that, sorry. But no, the neighbourhood alert is really effective because it does come into the team that we can pick up, and that can come back to you, and it's really quite helpful as well for the reporting when I wanted to compile things together or get a feeling of Linda was asking what's happening around this. When we've got something around the punt outs or something like that, it's good. That works for me. So that was that, and that's bad anything.
Okay.
Good. Just the other one with regards to taxis, we have a really good relationship with the licensing team at the City Council, and again, taxis for us. You know, they have something to lose. So you know, we do sort of. They're supposed to be ambassadors on the road, aren't they?
Very good. I'm sure Richard will let it out and comment on the 101. So we have to take some decisions. We have to make some recommendations to the officers. I kind of got a sense that there are kind of two. Sorry, Councillor Gillespie. Is it part of the recommendation or is it another question?
Oh, it is, yeah.
For the recommendation, yeah.
Thanks. Just referring to some of the statistics, I'm happy with the suggestions you've made, by the way.
Yeah.
But looking at the statistics for crime and the environmental reports as well, I see that in Market the number of other burglaries is nearly doubled in the most recent report. They don't seem to be in chronological order, which is a little bit confusing, but yet other burglaries are up to 24. Violent crime steadily increasing. Most worrying, the number of needles reported has gone from 0 to 11. And added to that, 2 first-hand reports of people experiencing problems with people abusing drugs. I'd like that to be looked at. I'm concerned about that.
Okay. I mean, I'm assuming things like that you can do outside the general priorities in relation to the recommendations from the area committee. So, for members of the area committee, what I'm proposing is that the items that we will propose, the nighttime economy was one, which you were recommending. Then we would have traffic junction enforcement for all traffic junction users, which includes vehicles being in the cycle box, because that is a dangerous issue. I've seen it in Lensfield Road a number of occasions. And then in relation to that, there's a separate one, which was the 20-mile-an-hour point. Which I think is something that I get a sense from the meeting that is very high on that priority. And then there's kind of a subsector which is, you know, the cycle lights. And this is much for the safety of the students, because it's that time of year again, we have a whole new set of students turning up, and it'd be good to just make sure that they were safe.
But in fairness, the cycle lights for us is almost a business.
So it's kind of business as usual, so we don't have to put that as a recommendation. Is that something that the members of the committee are happy with? I'm just conscious of time, so we do need to move on. Yeah? Good?
I was going to say, I think perhaps for the next quarter, we should make illegal punt out enforcement a priority, because obviously now it is tailing off, although with this Indian summer, it's still very busy out there, but it has got to an unacceptable level this summer. It's really got quite aggressive. And I think we need to have... I know the police went out on patrol a number of times, and I think that's very helpful, and I think we need to be doing more to make the point that it's just not acceptable.
Perhaps what we should do is invite the Executive Councillor for the next cycle to actually come and tell us what the plans are, because that's it's the December cycle, so it's within time to actually implement them before the next season, which is kind of end of February. Very good.
Yeah, I think a report on the public would be far more effective.
A report?
So here, the public space protection order, and what the time...
Yes, that's what I mean. So it would be that to come to us in December.
I mean, not the why the Executive Council, we actually want to know what the timeline is on the public space protection order and how effective it is going to be.
Yeah, so for the next cycle. For the next cycle, yeah.
Thanks.
Very good, thank you very much. So we now move on to the next item, which is the bid. I think we have representatives of the bid to step forward.
Yes, and then.
So, if you could have people's attention, we'd like to welcome Ian Sanderson and Edward Quigley from the BID. They're going to give us a short presentation for 5 minutes. We'll then open it to the audience to ask questions, make comments, and hopefully the representatives will be able to answer them. So over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Edward Quigley, I'm the BID manager. I'm going to give you a brief update on activity of Cambridge BID over the last year. I attended this meeting last year and did the same with residents then. There have been some changes with the BID in terms of governance in the year that's passed. So it's opportune for me to introduce Ian Sanderson, who is the newly elected or recently elected chairman of the BID. And Ian will just say a few words to introduce himself to you.
Good evening, yes, Ian Sanderson. So I live in Cambridge on Mill Road, so not from the area of this committee. I've been in Cambridge about 10 years. I'm a keen and safe cyclist, I let you all know, and a keen and safe driver. And I've been the chairman of the BID since May of this year. I was on the board before that, and before that I was one of the founding chairman of what was called Love Cambridge in those days, I suppose Councillor Cantrell involved in that as well. So nice to be here this evening, and Ed's going to give a few minutes now about the work we do, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you, Ian. So the work of Cambridge BID is split into 4 areas. Pride and promotion, which is about our marketing efforts. Welcoming and vibrant, which includes our city ambassadors, the Christmas lights. Safe and clean, which does what it says on the tin. And business support. Before I talk about some of those issues, and there is quite a few of the projects that we work on that have relevance to a lot of the topics that we mentioned here tonight, so I'm going to focus on those. Before I talk on that, I'm just going to give a very brief overview about what the BID is, because I recognise some residents and faces, I don't recognise others. BID stands for Business Improvement District. Cambridge is one of just over 200 BIDs in the country. We, like other BIDs, are funded by the businesses and organisations based in the city centre. They pay a levy each year, which is collected by the City Council and passed on to us, and we use that money to deliver various projects and initiatives that businesses voted for in a ballot in 2012. So we are at the moment halfway through the first term of the Cambridge BID. It's a 5-year term that started on the 1st of April 2013. It will come to an end on the 31st of March 2018, but prior to that, businesses and organisations will be invited to vote again as to whether or not they want to renew the BID and continue the work that we do. So, on the work that we do, I mentioned pride and promotion. This is the marketing efforts for the BID. There hasn't been much that's been talked about tonight in questions earlier that relates to our work under this section. But to give you an example, under pride and promotion we provide a wealth of printed materials that are available in different parts of the city for visitors and residents to use. We deliver various events, such as the Christmas lights switch on the 15th of November this year. We also work with local charities. This year we've been working with the Royal Anglian Benevolent Charity, and we've raised over £6,500 for them. Going forward, we support initiatives in Cambridge, so there's going to be a jazz festival in Cambridge for the first time in November. We've supported that. We have an initiative called the Big Draw, which is starting this weekend. And I'm also in touch with the City Council about, in its very early stages, potentially tapping into some public art funding for the BID to deliver in 2016. Moving forward, and we're getting to some of the areas that we deliver that have relevance to what's been mentioned already. Welcoming and vibrant, under that work stream we have our city ambassadors, the Bowler Hat Brigade, as they've been branded. They're out in the city meeting and greeting visitors to the city. They're on course this year to see over 60,000 people. They do a lot more than that. They do a lot of environmental reporting. Evan is here. Hi, Evan. From the County Council. Evan has a good relationship, I hope you agree, with our ambassadors who tally and log environmental issues in the city centre. So it's crack paving, signage. You can bet your bottom dollar that the poor markings at Parkside in terms of differentiating the cycle lane has been recorded by our ambassadors, and that is reported through to the County Council or other agencies. What they also do is capture other data, and what we've been doing as part of the pump tout work is capturing data on pump touts and where they've been operating and when. A simple tally of numbers that the ambassadors encounter and providing that information through to the City Council to support the work that they're doing with other agencies. Under Welcoming and Vibrant, we also have our Christmas lights scheme in Cambridge, 25 streets. It is the bid that delivers the Christmas lights in the city, and we will be doing the same again this year. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be switching those lights on the 15th of November. Moving on to Safe and Clean, again, a few areas here that bear relevance to what's been mentioned. So the officer, Matt Johnson, I think his name is, mentioned street pastors that are in Cambridge and in the city and do excellent work. We help to fund street pastors and their work. We also fund taxi marshals at key dates throughout the month, paydays particularly, and those taxi marshals ensure that those who are out in our city centre can get home safely and use the taxi rank without hindrance, particularly vulnerable people. Under Safe and Clean, we also work with an organisation called CAMBAC, Cambridge Business Against Crime. CAMBAC work closely with the police. Alcohol-related violent crime was mentioned earlier on this meeting, and we work with CAMBAC to try and tackle that and engage the business community and the nighttime economy. We have looked to enact a project this year with some of our larger late-night venues, which would see the installation of water vending machines to try and encourage revellers to drink more water and become less drunk. We didn't have much joy with the venues in getting their buy-in, frankly. So we're now looking at another project entirely, which is to try and help to deal with the street life issues in the city, but in a joint agency approach, working with some of our charities, perhaps Winter Comfort or Jimmy's, whatever. So that's early days, and there'll be more news on that in the coming weeks. What else have we got under CAMBAC? I've mentioned the street pastors. The clean element of Safe and Clean, the bid delivers two strands of work under this area. The first is programmed cleansing across the city centre. The local authority has a statutory obligation to collect litter and do basic cleansing. They don't have an obligation to jet wash or remove gum, but when we consulted on the bid, it was clear from businesses that they wanted to see the bid deliver that. So we have a programmed schedule of cleansing throughout the bid area where we have operatives that jet wash, deep cleanse, tackle grot spots. Hopefully you will have noticed a difference in some of the streets. We're having very good feedback from businesses and members of the public, and this is an ongoing schedule of works that will continue as long as the bid exists. We're actually 3 months ahead of schedule with our programmed cleansing, and we just go right back and start again. The busier streets with higher footfall receive a more regular visit, and those lesser frequented streets a more infrequent visit. There is a response service that we operate for businesses. We operate a rapid response service that serves businesses Thursday through Monday from 7 a.m, well, it might be 6 actually, 7, I think it's 7 till 10, where businesses, shopkeepers, whatever really, can contact our operatives during those days and hours, and they will tend to clean whatever detritus is in a shop doorway. Someone's leftover food, often bodily fluids is the main cause, and that's been well received by businesses. We've had now this year just over 60 call-outs. The longest response time is 45 minutes and the quickest is 4 minutes. Obviously this is a service for businesses, but it keeps our streets clean for everyone. So that is something that's well received. And then our final work stream is business support, where we help our businesses to either save money or develop as businesses and grow. As part of that, we've just launched a new service, which is Cambridge Bid Connects, where we are connecting our businesses to each other, but also to other organisations that can support them. So we have a host of training and workshops, events that start next week and run right through into next year. We also help businesses save money on utilities bills. We have a mystery shop scheme which has an awards evening, which was last week. You may have seen some coverage in the Cambridge News on our award-winning businesses. And I'm going to finish there really, because I'd rather hand over to you to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions or comments from the audience? Start with Councillor Nsinga, then we go here, and then Councillor Gearing, Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you. It's in a question about your Cambridge Pride work stream in relation to the marketing that you do with the city, that type of activity. As a Newland councillor, I feel increasingly concerned about the number of coach parties that come into the city and the number of day trippers that we have. I'd be quite interested to know what the opinion of the bid businesses is on the value of that to the city and the potential downside of it, because my personal view as a resident is that actually large numbers of coach trippers and huge crowds kind of walking through the streets in a group cause almost as much disruption and irritation as the punt towers do. But I'm aware that local businesses may feel differently about them. I would be interested to know whether they do or whether actually that concern is something which is shared by local businesses.
Okay, so lady at the front.
Yes, two things actually. If you're doing street cleaning, can you think about snow clearance in the middle of town? I find that some of the shops can clear, but some of the pavements are absolutely dreadful. And I would have thought that that was something that coordinated effort from the businesses in the centre would be very useful. The other thing is someone who has lived for 40 years in Cambridge and has worked right in the centre. I really object to those dreadful ambassadors. I can never see them doing anything helpful. They just seem to wander around in this dreadful outfit. And I think there's money could be better spent when we're cutting council staff in all sorts of ways. I think money could be better spent in other ways, but perhaps I don't share that.
I'm sure the gentleman will be able to answer that question. Councillor Geary?
This is just a very broad question. I think Cambridge Bid does a fantastic job linking businesses and the city. My question is more sort of conceptual. Now that you're also offering courses, do you comply with some form of corporate social responsibility, or do you have a sustainability policy? Are you helping businesses to become greener in our city?
Okay. And then Councillor Gillespie.
Thanks. Thanks, Edward. We've met on the radio, but not in person. We were talking about the Boycott Cambridge campaign on the radio.
Oh, yes.
We discussed working on an ethical guide to Cambridge to let people know about businesses which are independent, ethical and sustainable, and really championing them to try and improve the reputation and the name of the city. How has that gone?
Okay, Councillor Holland.
Could you explain how the cleansing of the city centre, your work team, how do you differentiate your work over and above the city council's street scene, or city, I've forgotten what they're called now, but street people who traditionally were called term street scene? Sorry.
Okay, and I think that will come and take the answers.
We've had this one before.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I've got an answer for that.
Yeah.
And then you have to say it.
Yeah. Well, has there been any more progress on reintroducing the people?
I'm sure they have an answer. So we just go back to the top of the list. The first question was Councillor Nzinga, coach parties, day trippers, good or bad?
You're right, actually, yes. I think you will speak to some businesses and they will see endless streams of people not spending money in the city as a problem. There's a term that has been used to refer to certain types of visitors, and that's lick and leave tourists who come, bring a packed lunch, spend a couple of hours maybe outside the Guildhall, walk around a bit and then leave, and don't actually contribute to the economy.
Buy an ice cream.
Yeah. So from the bid's point of view, and I would say this, and I don't want to put words in Emma Thornton's mouth as the head of the DMO, the Destination Management Organisation, but the focus that we have is to encourage those visitors to stay longer and spend more and contribute to the economy. It's not about necessarily increasing the number of visitors to the city, it's ensuring that they understand what the offer here is and that they contribute to the local economy. So we have promotions like Independence Week, which is, I would say, pretty much aimed more at residents, really, to remind them how good our independents are. But the point of the ambassadors, and I'll get on to your point in a moment, Madam, about the ambassadors, the point of them, which there are many points to them, is to help direct people around the city and understand that actually we have got a really good offer here in Cambridge. But short answer is a lot of businesses will have the same frustration as residents about large parties of tourists visiting the city and not contributing to the economy. The flip side of that, as I don't need to tell you, and everyone here, is that we have a large number of businesses that do rely on visitors to the city. We have 20,000 people employed in the city centre, predominantly in retail and leisure, so it's an important economic driver in the city and region. We have to find a balance, and we're trying to do that, but it's not easy.
Okay, so the next question was snow clearance and bowler hats.
I was going to wear mine tonight, but I didn't. Snow clearance, well, the one thing that I didn't mention at the beginning when I introduced the bid is that business improvement districts should not and will not, if they're well run, replace services that should be provided by a local authority. But I'll just answer you. But if you take the point from a business, they pay business rates. They expect certain services to be provided by the local authority. They don't want to pay then a second rate for a company such as us to do what the council should be doing. So the bid plays an interesting role in this. One of the roles that we play is to ensure that the city council...
Because they don't.
Is to ensure that the city council do what they should be doing. But also, furthermore, the cleansing contractors that we have, as part of the contract that we have with them, is that obviously in December, January, when there is very cold weather, we're not going to go out with a jet washer, jet wash streets and cause an ice hazard. So what we're going to do in times where there is a lull in our cleansing activity is get them to go out and clear snow from high footfall areas. So short answer is yes.
Just on that point, because Councillor Holland's question was the cleansing of the city centre, how you differentiate from the city council. So it's worth picking up on that one now.
Sure.
We're just kind of talking about that relationship, if that's okay. Then we'll get to bowler hats.
Well, as I mentioned, there are baselines in terms of what a local authority does. And the city council, the county council, and every local authority operates to those baselines. There is also direction from government in terms of what the statutory obligations of a local authority are. And quite clearly, black and white, they are to do X, Y, and Z, which is litter cleansing, litter clearance, and certain cleansing. But it's not to jet wash, it's not to remove gum. And you could get into the minutiae of this. Gum doesn't have to be, it's not litter collecting when it's bedded into a surface. So effectively, 2 seconds on the floor, and it's not something that the council has to do. So therefore, we deliver the deep cleansing, the jet washing that the city council, frankly, hasn't got the resources to deliver. What we also do, and this kind of refers to the question around how the bid operates and encourages better practice, but we're delivering other projects to encourage recycling and better practices in the city centre. So we're just about to roll out the pilot of a project, first in the country, which is called Bin It Your Way, and it's about changing behaviours in terms of gun disposal. So we're working with the city council. You're going to see bins that are wrapped with promotional materials. Businesses are involved, and it's about changing behaviours and ensuring that people dispose of their gun appropriately, because it costs us a lot of money to clean it. So that's a short answer to that.
Okay, bowler hats.
Bowler hats. I'm sorry that you're not a fan. There's a couple of elements to your question. You mentioned in the latter part that the money could be spent, council services being cut, but the money could be spent much wiser. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're completely separate to the council. We're not the council. So the projects that we deliver are governed by the consultation we had with businesses. And the businesses in the city centre really overwhelmingly wanted to see a visitor welcome service that would provide people who are first-time visitors maybe to the city with a warm and friendly welcome. Now, the ambassadors, I will defend them staunchly, as you imagine, but they are fantastic in terms of their customer service levels. They have a wonderful knowledge of the city centre, and they don't just help visitors and tourists from near and far. They do an awful lot of work with businesses as well. They contribute to stuff like the data captured on punt outs and the broken paving stones that will irritate you, rightly, and businesses get reported by our ambassadors, and they take ownership of those problems as well. So I'm a big advocate. I'm sorry you don't like them.
Well, I wanted that because, I mean, I work around King's Parade, and
Yeah.
I never see them actually interacting with anybody. That's all. So if you
Have
say
you spoken
they
to
are,
one?
well, no.
Interact with them, they're great.
It's not, I don't need to. I'm usually rushing from one job to
Sure,
another.
no, I get that.
I just wanted to be reassured that they are actually doing something.
They are, and
Yes.
sorry not to carry on, but we provide, well, I answer to Ian and the board, and actually we answer to the businesses and the city, and the ambassadors capture a wealth of data that we will be producing as well, so yes.
So very quickly, we have kind of two themes, Councillor Geary and Councillor Gillespie. One is about sustainability and what you're doing to help businesses in terms of social responsibility and sustainability. And I think linked to that is kind of like the ethical guide to Cambridge. And then we'll come to Peapods.
Yeah, great. So in terms of responsible behaviours as a company, we have a robust set of policies. We're an independent private limited company, so in a way we can operate as we want to a certain extent, but we want to operate with as much transparency as we can. We want to be an exemplar in terms of good practice. So as part of that, we were recently accredited as a living wage employer, and Councillor Herbert visited our office and had a photo taken with me. He must have been thrilled. And we've been accredited as a living wage employer, which is a real coup for Cambridge, as we're the first bid outside of London to receive that accreditation. There's only 2 bids in the country that have it, and they're both in London. We also, as I mentioned earlier, are delivering on projects such as the Bin It Your Way Gun project. We have another recycling project. These are not part of our core business proposals, but they are part of an improved and better city for Cambridge. So we're delivering on what businesses told us they wanted us to deliver, and now we're trying to add value to that. And then the final thing I'll add is just, I mentioned earlier about the last mile delivery and the reduction of commercial vehicles. Again, not a project that businesses asked us to do, but we're in a position to bring the right stakeholders together. And it's not, quoting Ian now, it's not about us finding a solution and making it happen. It's about us bringing the right people together and getting them to make it happen. So we have a meeting next week with Councillor Herbert and many other stakeholders, and you'll hear about that through our Twitter, social media and our website. But again, this is another project and initiative from the bid that essentially has the betterment of the city at heart. So, yeah.
And then the final one was Peapods.
Peapods, yes.
Will we see them again on the streets?
Hope so, yes. I haven't got a definite answer for you, but I can tell you exactly where we're at. We're waiting for the City Council to come back to us with some costings around the logistics. So, not to bore into the detail, but the Peapods are held with the City Council. They were previously deployed by the City Council. The bid is not going to fund wholly the cost of bringing them back out, but we are prepared to work jointly with the City Council, perhaps another stakeholder, to make it happen. A full Peapod on a Saturday night is really heavy, and it has to be taken away, and there's a lot of cost associated with the logistics of that, but that's what we're looking into now.
Okay, so 2 very quick points, one from Councillor Gillespie and then Councillor, and then we're finished for this item and we're moving on to the next item. Councillor Gillespie, very quick.
Oh yes, there was that question. Did you want to answer? Yes, on the
It was on the ethical guide.
So yes, we were on the radio a couple of months ago. Short answer, not much in the way as moved forward. I've had some communication with, is it the student, what is it, the student hub that's developing it. And we haven't got together yet, partly because my time has been taken up by a number of other projects. However, I can commit to engaging with them in the next month or so, and then you and I can liaise directly on it, and I'll update you. But in short, as I said on the radio when we were on air, I'm much more in favour of a positive angle that promotes our ethical businesses than a boycott Cambridge campaign.
Okay, great. Do you want to quickly make a comment?
I have actually seen the ambassadors regularly helping people, so I mean I can assure you that they definitely, I think, are doing a good job. I have asked this before and I'll ask it again. Is it possible for those ambassadors who are passing on really important information to the councils to pass it on to councillors as well, because then it helps us to then chase things to ensure that they get addressed?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. I think that is quite an important point, but we are asked by the county council to report, paving stones or what have you, through the actual reporting mechanism. So we actually go online, the ambassadors go online to the actual portal and go through the reporting mechanism, which then gets logged as an actual incident or... Yes, for sure. So we obviously have Matthew Shooter sits on the board, John Onslow was on the board, was attending, supporting him as well, and they're very, very aware of that process. And so I think rather than having more than one reporting process, the ambassadors comply with the city and county normal reporting procedures. Therefore, that actual report can then be logged and then be traced, and then we can follow up on that as well. So hopefully you were aware of that.
Well, we don't get it.
Okay.
So that doesn't really...
No.
Let me take that away and speak with Jason about that. There may be a fairly straightforward way for you to receive a monthly report. What obviously I'm sure you appreciate is that our operations manager Jason and our ambassadors need to spend their time getting stuff done and reporting so that a fix is resolved rather than endless reporting. But I take your point.
We can help.
Yeah, it could be useful in terms of, yes,
Okay, so on that point...
One point, we have got some copies of our annual report here that I'll leave on the front desk over to the left there. And so please do take them and read what we do.
Excellent, many thanks. Thanks for this evening. Okay, so we now move on to... Unusual for clapping in the area. Indeed, that's a good point. So we now turn to the environmental data report. So it's Wendy present. I see there was a representative from Bath Beatty very keen to come over and sit in front of us, but unfortunately you'll just have to wait a little while longer. Okay, so over to Wendy.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Yo. I'm one of the operations managers for Fixed Open Spaces. I'm here today to report present the environmental report to you for the period of July to September. This is an annual report, so it's a lot longer than usual. I'm not intending to go through in large detail. If there are any questions, I'll take those after I've done a quick summary about the key points. So what you will see we have entailed is a number of continuing priorities on page 41, which cover the west and central area for the period of October to December. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact we have the results of the ward blitz for the market included in the appendices of this report. And we also have the Union Ward blitz coming up in November. So if there are any suggestions for areas you'd like us to target during that period, we would welcome those. Either tonight or directly through contacting us. We also have a breakdown of the actions we've taken for the previous priorities. Again, I'm not intending to read through all of those. If there are any questions, I'll answer those as they come up. And then what we've included in this report is to enable you to give you a full picture of the action undertaken by the services in the past 12 months, as we have a thorough summary of all of the priorities that this committee has set to us and the relevant actions that have been undertaken. You will also see that the data we capture has been expanded, so we are now including data from the same period for the previous year to enable you to make a comparison about the same period for the previous year to see if things have gone up or down, and to enable you to sort of use that to set priorities should you want to do so. We continue to provide the data broken down at ward level for the enforcement team, and we have also increased the dog warden data that we're going to be presenting to you. A lot of that is fairly new, so it's not showing a lot of figures at the moment, but as the dog wardens need to take more action, that will actually become populated. We also have on page 61 a new set of data provided by the recycling and waste teams, which is citywide data on the period of April to June. I've been advised they're not able to break that down into ward data, and they will provide that kind of the period, previous period to enable a full capture of data. Again, we have the proactive and community work that the teams have undertaken, summarising the previous quarter and the previous year. I'd also like to draw your attention to the fact that we are continuing to offer free dog microchipping throughout the city. It becomes law next April, so if there are any residents with dogs that need microchipping, we will now be offering appointments on a Wednesday where we'll come and microchip people's dogs free of charge, particularly for those that have not been able to attend their events or perhaps work and not been able to get to them. And again, they can be contacted through the dog warden service and we'll arrange those appointments for you. Finally, we've got the resource section on page 68. We've rejigged this slightly so it's a bit more legible for everyone to be able to read. But you'll see there's still a provision of bins for all 3 wards, which can be allocated as they're needed. And you've also got dog fouling signs as well now, which can be allocated in areas where you feel the signage might need to be improved. And then in the appendices we have some pictures of some of the work undertaken by the street cleansing teams and the city rangers in the past quarter. Unfortunately, I can't include all the pictures, so these are just a summary of what work we've undertaken. And that's the report in its briefest form. If there are any questions, I'll do them.
Any questions? We'll start with Bev. We'll take a few questions and then Wendy can write some answers.
I see you do ward blitzes every so often. I wondered, cattle are brilliant. They're utterly wonderful. They're a great asset to the city. But they do tend to leave rather a lot of cow patch behind on the paths. And I wondered, because it doesn't seem to happen. It hasn't happened. As far as I know, it hasn't happened so far. Once they've left, is there any possibility of having the paths, I don't know, in Co-Fen and maybe buildings on the common, sort of swept or cleansed in some way, so that you have the leaves and the dust.
Understand. So cleaning the paths across the common towards the cows have gone. Councillor Holland.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank Wendy for this, and particularly to highlight how effective your team have cleansed the runnels. I've been campaigning for that for years, and really to send a message back to the Executive Councillor that he's the first Executive Councillor who seems to have addressed the problem. I've actually seen a porter from Pembroke go out with a litter picker and help clear it of debris, and also a parking enforcement officer. So really just to commend you and to keep that project running, because it's working.
Okay. Councillor Bick, over here.
Chair, I wanted to ask about the ward blitz activity in Market Ward. And I'm not quite sure how to regard it, because some of the items that are reported there seem like very good things, but I'm surprised that they aren't necessary all of the time. So if you visited a recycling centre once a week for a month and found that there was plenty to do, why isn't that something that gets done the 11 other months of the year then? So if I could broaden that out, having done this blitz in Market Ward, what lessons have you taken away from it which would lead to variations in what you do as an absolute routine, week in, week out? And while I mentioned the recycling centres, there are 2 recycling centres in Market Ward, and the other one also has problems of the kind that you note here, and that's the one in Adam and Eve Street car park. and it's sort of a pity given that a blitz seems to be when these things happen. It doesn't seem to have gotten hit on this occasion. Would comment on that?
Thank you. People applying for planning have to attach a notice outside the house or range or somewhere nearby. Similarly, when you close road for events and that, you put up notices. Nobody ever takes these down. I wonder if street rangers and others could just be told when they notice an out-of-date sign, they could take it down. That was my first point. I carry a pen, I can do my bit. The other point, quite briefly, was I believe you have deemed consent to put a poster up of 1 square metre or less. Frequently, one sees around town these fabric posters are quite large, attached to railings and the like.
Yes.
I've never known anybody do anything to prevent this or to deal with this.
Okay, Councillor Gearing, then Councillor Holland again, and we'll get them to give some answers.
Yeah, thank you very much for this overview. I was wondering what is captured by events. Are these just City Council organised events? Because I noticed that, again, this year in May Week, the performance of different colleges and their Mayball committees was very varied in terms of how good they are at reducing the amount of rubbish they produce. And often you find in the vicinity of the college that had just had their major Mayball, also huge amounts of rubbish that falls by the wayside and is not captured by the industrial waste disposal that these Mayball committees use. So are we doing anything to work with Mayball committees?
Okay, and then Councillor Holland again.
Yeah. Just the pig bags again, sorry to go on about it, but you know that the collection they're left for a few days lingering.
This is out of the roadside type.
Huntington Road,
Yeah.
you know, they're all
they're kind of pinky red type.
Yeah.
Okay, so just going back to the start, cattle on paths, cleaning paths after cattle have gone. Is that possible, or do we allow nature to wash it away?
It's something, to be honest, that I can't answer today. I'm certainly going to take that away and discuss that with the operations manager because it seems like a very straightforward solution. I think it's something we should be able to put in place if it's not already. So again, I will take it away and we'll come back with an answer as to whether it is, and obviously if it is, how we can programme that in. Okay, next one was more of a pat on the back than a question. Councillor Holland on the lots. So that was good. Councillor Dick on ward blitz activity. What do you take away from it? What can be done more throughout the year? And then the recycling centres Adam and Eve car park. Okay. Apologies on the missing of the Adam and Eve Street. That's me because I'm not overly familiar with the ward boundaries. I'm still learning them. But basically, all recycling centres that were in the ward boundaries were included in this. What we've taken away is obviously this mentions the cleansing of them, particularly on the first page. So they've been cleansed at least once we clear them and dispose of fly-tipped items. When they're always trying to pull the bins out and do a cleanse, that perhaps might not happen all the time. What we've actually learned from that, particularly the recycling centres, is that there is a massive problem with fly-tipping and recognise that. So what we're doing is actually adding that on as one of the recommendations we think should be looked at for the upcoming period, of focusing on fly-tipping recycling centres to try and discourage that behaviour, which is just that particular recycling centres. With regards to the wall blitz, market was the most difficult area to do, obviously because it's an area that has a lot of council staff in already. What we've actually been able to do is highlight some areas where perhaps we haven't had to be able to have double wins as much as possible. They cover the city, we have the equivalent of one person. So what they've actually been able to do is get out to areas, focus on them that they haven't previously done, and they've learned got a lot of intelligence and be able to take action based on that. The same with the city rangers, they spent a lot of time dealing with the abandoned bike blocks, and I think the bike racks look a lot tidier now, they've removed them. We actually had a really bin and a half full of blocks that were just sitting in the city centre, predominantly along the market area. So what we've implemented is a new process, that the locks aren't left to build up anymore. We'll deal with them as we do with abandoned bikes, remove them. So there are a few lessons we've learned. What we're actually taking at the end of the wall blitz schedule, which is the end of December, is analysing how it's performed across the system, what improvements we can actually make across the board for different service areas.
Okay. Anyone else that you kind of feed back to as specifics, and then what you decided?
Absolutely, we do.
And then we have notices, taking down notices across the the city centre.
Certainly, I can ask the rangers on their patrols to remove the out-of-date signs. That should be something that all of my teams do. If they're not, I will reiterate that message. With regards to the deemed consent, it does depend on what the posters are actually for. If they're, for example, events not for commercial profit, such as a church bazaar or a school fete, they are classed as deemed consent, so they don't need planning permission, yet they should still get permission from whoever's land they put them on, so either the county council or the city council with their railings. With regards to the banners that we see, some of them are authorised. So, for example, Race for Life on Parker's Piece is authorised. The ones that are not authorised, we simply remove. We take them straight down. We deal with quite a few of those a year. But we try to take them down before they cause any issues, because obviously we put them up in locations they shouldn't be.
Okay, and then we have Councillor Gearing in relation to City Council organised events, but what about other events and the rubbish created by private organisations like the colleges? And then we have Councillor Holland's point on pink bags, which I think is a point actually across the whole area actually, because it's certainly something we experience in Needham.
With regards to the events, can I just clarify if there's a particular page in the report that you were mentioning with regards to the events? Was it the ones that were termed as recycling events or?
No, you had a statistic where you collected amount of rubbish at events, yeah. So those were recycling events.
Yeah, those are
okay.
Events actually run by the recycling and waste team, specifically aimed at encouraging recycling either from residents or as part of the on-street recycling. If that's not clear, I can actually label it up to specify that a little bit clearer. With regards to the main balls, I'm not aware of any practices we currently have. Again, I'll need to go away and speak to the operations manager, who obviously deals with the people that come in early in the mornings and deal with the aftermath of the main balls and find out what we currently do.
Okay, and then pink bags, which is kind of an ongoing.
Yeah. I'm aware of the problem, and again, I'm going to have to take that away to the senior operations manager and speak to them in their response. I mean, we do welcome all comments about pink sacks that are left out, because it helps to highlight locations if there's a particular round, for example.
It's not a huge thing, but it's just ongoing.
Yeah, I will again mention to the operations manager and see if we can look into that idea for you.
Good. One final question then, Mr. Rosenstein.
I'm sorry.
So first of all, I'd like to thank you for installing 2 additional bins in King Street recently, following the meeting. But what surprised me was that one of the reasons that I asked for that was that we have a takeaway there with no bins provided by itself, which I thought takeaways were expected to do, and as they obviously generate a lot of rubbish. And the reason these bins were needed is that their patrons walking in one direction had bins that would pass naturally by the post office, but going the other direction they tended to use mine and my wife's bicycle basket. That fortunately seems to have come to a certain rapid shock with the time. But it does surprise me that the City Council has to find bins for this when the generators of the refuse are takeaways producing large amounts of refuse which their customers are very responsible for.
So, we have a comment view and then we'll wrap up on this particular point.
Yeah, just to advise that new legislation last year actually gave us additional powers to require anyone that causes, it's termed like antisocial behaviour or causes a problem detrimental to the environment, we could serve a notice on them and require them to either put something in place to stop a behaviour. So if it was a suitable location, you could actually make them purchase things or actually reduce their packaging. It's a matter of having the evidence to be able to put that in place. So it kind of involves a lot of evidence gathering, particularly with the maritime economy. It's easier said than done, sort of, because we don't have officers on at the time that the problems may occur. But certainly something that we can look at to see if we can get the evidence and pursue that further.
Okay, very good. That's excellent. Many thanks. Oh, right, yes, sorry. Quite right. Priorities. So, we have a new one, don't we? We have continuing and new ones. Is the committee comfortable with the continuing priorities and then the suggested priority by Wendy, which is on page 42, and Councillor Nessing?
Can I just add a suggested priority for the Newman Ward Blitz, given that it's about to be autumn, should be clearing the streets of leaves as quickly as possible, and particularly making sure that some of the drains, which tend to block up and then cause enormous puddles, don't become a problem this autumn. It would be really, really lovely not to see a huge puddle at the edge of Clarkson Road and at the bottom of West Road.
Is Councillor Holland suggesting that should be Castle as well as Newman?
Yeah, no, actually, it's something I apologise for forgetting earlier, and I meant to mention it. I've been in touch with Wendy. It's about, I just want to know whether the City Council is able to clear the weeds along the curbs. If not, that's fine, and we'll let residents' associations know that they need to organise, or we need to organise, residents to go out with a hoe and remove all the weeds.
This is at the curb with the road, yes?
Yeah, it's just on the road, and you know how weeds grow up and grass verges. Sorry, Ed.
You have to put the microphone near where your mouth was.
Oh, sorry. Is it not?
No, yeah.
Right, just, yeah. I don't know whether it may well be a county responsibility, but I just simply want to know if there's no funding for it, do we need to let residents know that they need to clear the curbside area of weeds and grass and soil?
Yeah. Okay,
or is it something that the City
Yeah.
Council will do?
I mean, on streets obviously where there's free access to the channels, basically we'll send out a sweeper, which obviously prevents the build-up of detritus in the first place. A lot of the roads we have the problems on are those where we can't drive down because of vehicles parking down there. So what we've had to do on a number of streets is actually do that manually, and that's taken a lot of time and a lot of resource.
Okay.
And we've tried to focus that on areas where we've had problems. We've also undertaken some work with the probation team to undertake, I think it was in Chesterton, there was a road similarly that had weeds growing out of it. But basically we kind of got them the community to pay back to do a lot of the work and clear the channels themselves. I'm not quite sure what degree of involvement County have. I can see Evan is nodding at me when he wants to add a comment on that.
We undertake 3 weed kill treatments a year within the city. Sorry, Evan Longman from Highways. Yeah, we undertake 3 weed kill treatments a year within the city. And in fact, it is our city colleagues that do that on our behalf.
Oh, okay.
What you'll often find is that the treatment will kill the weed, but obviously the dead weed still stays there, which does look unsightly. But it's a resource thing. I would strongly recommend that people don't actually start working in the highway because it's a very, very dangerous environment to go out with, upon. So if they run out on the highway with a hoe and start hoeing
With
away,
a hoe?
yeah, can you imagine them standing in the carriageway and they're going to get knocked over?
These are residential streets.
It's still a very, very dangerous place, the highway.
Calling.
Okay.
Request for Castle to be weed free.
Weed free.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we'll draw up to a close. We will add in terms of leaf clearing part of the ward blitz as well. Very good. Many thanks, Wendy. So we now turn to street lighting, and there are 2 parts to this. The first part is in relation to street lighting within the city, and it's regarding the replacement programme. And we'd like to welcome Mark Oldfield from Balfour Beatty. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, and good evening everyone. I've just come along really to give you an update on where we are with the street lighting upgrade within Cambridge, specifically the city centre. We're about to commence the next phase of works, which is within the historic core of Cambridge. Just a bit of background for you. I started on this contract about 2-3 months ago, and one of my first tasks was looking at an improvement plan of how we do implement this, because I think it's fair to say we've been some time on the installations of where we are on site. Contractually, just to give you a bit of background there, we're given 6 to 8 weeks in a normal scenario to from commencing work to being out of the area. That clearly, well, it's a long time. We're looking at how we can improve on that, but clearly we cannot be doing within the city centre, within the historic core purely from a disruption point of view, apart from anything else. So I've worked with colleagues to try and look at how we can improve that. And really, it was just to touch base with you, just to let you know what's happening within the city centre and the approach that we're taking, which is a very different one. One of which is the length of time that we're working on any particular site, and with any particular street light. We won't be, within the historic core, working on any lighting column longer than a week. In the majority of cases, it'll be within it'll be within a couple of days. So that's from installing a new light, where we need to removing the old column, and fully reinstating. There are three key areas that affect the city centre core. One is full replacement of heritage lighting, so that's installing a new column, taking away the old column and fully reinstating, as I've mentioned. The second area is Richardson candles. We've got to upgrade those. They really worry me how we're going to do that, because apart from anything else, well, it doesn't worry me because we've got the solution, but initially it was worrying because they're attached to historic buildings and had awful visions of starting to take away brackets and putting new brackets on to historic buildings and the consequential problems with that. We're going to be refurbishing all Richardson candles on site, so visually what you will see effectively is a maintenance team coming to restore the candles on site. We won't be removing any at all from the area. And the third area are standard columns. It was important to me that whilst we've agreed with the City Council what kind of heritage is going where, we have also, there are areas which have currently got standard columns, we replaced with standard columns. I'm keen that we take the same approach with those and making sure that we're not on site any longer than a week to minimise disruption. So the key areas are the length of time. The second area of improvement is we have one gang, specialist gang, multi-skilled gang, with one dedicated supervisor. And the reason we've done that is so that they can react quickly to issues should they occur in terms of where they're installing lights. They can move around the city quicker and make sure that they're working to suit appropriate working times. For example, when you start going into the marketplace and the streets around there, that we're working early, finishing late, and not there in the middle of the day, and then they're moving on somewhere else. So there'll be a dedicated team looking at that. One key area is the liaison with stakeholders. So the stage we've got to at the moment, we know what's going where. All of the plans here for those. So we know what's going where, but now, for me, I think which is more critical is when we go there, and making sure that we're liaising as many stakeholders as possible to ensure that we're creating as least disruption as possible. So part of that is in our working times of where we'll be working, because clearly some areas outside the Guildhall, for example, the market, that trades 7 days a week, so we need to look at alternatives there. We need to go in a day, but it's how we work there and at what time. But also there's a lot of engagement required in terms of the colleges, with the businesses. We've been talking to BID as well, Cambridge BID, and residents to understand events, anything that might be happening in the area that we need to be aware of. That work is commencing, well, it commenced last week and continues. And the work programme, there are streets that we're looking at starting from the beginning of November. We've put an indicative plan together, and we're just finishing that now. We can move that round dependent on need within the area. So clearly, if where we think we're going on the street on the 7th of November, if that's not appropriate, then we'll do that another week. So that stakeholder liaison is happening now through one of my team, Natasha Dillon. whilst works are happening, we are going to have a customer vehicle in the city centre, close to wherever we're working. Serves two purposes, well three. One is to discuss street lighting more generally, where there may be issues outside of town, and I am aware that where we have been, there have been issues and there's still stuff we need to resolve. I made a note of the comment we made earlier on about cycle path signs which have gone missing, and I need to put that right. So customer vehicle is there for that. It's to discuss the programme and schedule, where we're meant to be going when, but also to respond to any issues. I am confident that the team that we have got working in the city centre are incredibly competent, very experienced, but where we have got issues that need addressing, we can deal with them there and then, rather than having to wait to go back. And then the final 2 points. One is around where we are working in streets. Natasha is going to be door knocking effectively, going and talking to the business and explaining what's going to happen. There's a high number of streets within the city centre where we won't be digging, which is great. We won't have no need to dig and excavate. A lot are either columns which we brought in to comply, in which case the columns have a long enough lifespan that we just need to change the head. So visually all you see is effectively the same as if it was someone maintaining a lighting column. Or they're wall bracketed units, in which case we work on those on an individual basis. So good news is there's less digging than we first anticipated. But in terms of where we're going, what column is going where, what light is going where, when it's going, and what work is involved. I'm quite happy to offer up for any of my team to walk around with ward councillors in your area to fully understand that. We did that on Thursday with Councillor Cairns as well, which proved very useful, certainly to us, to make sure we're getting even further local knowledge. It's not just about the business, but engaging with yourselves. But also talking to the businesses so when we know what we're doing, when we'll knock on the door and make sure they know what to expect. But the reality of what we should be seeing is less digging in the city centre. There will be some areas, smaller vehicles, a dedicated team, and nothing open for longer than a week. I think
okay, that's very good. That's very good. So clearly quite a lot of hands already. Quite a lot of hands. This is a very topical subject. Shall we start? If we work from the back, gentleman in purple first, and then Wendy, and then we'll move on, coming forward, gentleman at the front. So we start, gentleman at the back. We'll take some questions and then you can answer them all in one go.
Thank you. It's not a criticism, it's just a question. I had a resident of Castle wanting to know if there was a particular place he could go to on the website, for example, where he could see a timetable, a sort of schedule of works, because he said that it seems to me from where I'm sitting that there's no rhyme or reason for the different phases. But I think there probably is a logic there. Is there a web page?
Yeah,
basically?
okay.
Thank you.
Wendy?
Yes, I'm with Federation King Residents Association. We've had a lot of complaints about the digging of holes related to trees, and wondered if you have a method statement, because it seems to waste a lot of tree officer time having to come out and check out each individual hole. Do you not set out at the beginning a statement where you liaise with tree officers, for example, and just work out exactly what the implications are going to be for, say, digging, etc.?
Okay. Mr. Rosenstein. Then there was someone on the table. Yeah.
One specific question about the city centre. Will you be putting in new columns to replace any wall-mounted lights, or will you not further obstruct the pavements? The other question is about your asset records, because there's a load of barriers on price pieces by Walk that have been there abandoned for several weeks.
Price pieces.
Christ Peter's by Pikes Walk. There's a cabinet there that you worked on most recently. But this seems to keep happening all over the city, that these works are left done. And also in Jesus Lane, a column was knocked down recently. All the columns in Jesus Lane are 10 metres, somebody's put in an 8-metre one. So it looks like your records are pretty hopeless about what you're maintaining.
Alright, I mean, I think Wendy's going to have a barrier blitz at some point across the city. All their alphabet barriers.
It's not just alphabet.
Sorry, Councillor Gearing then.
Yeah, just to let you know, as Ward Councillor in Newnham, I had plenty of residents' complaints about this whole scheme, and especially about the unresponsiveness of your teams that are in the ward. If this continues in the city centre, it's going to create a catastrophe. So you need to either create a hotline dedicated for Cambridge or something to allow citizens to actually inform you of all the things that are going wrong. And one of the main complaints is that you leave the pavements open and unusable. Most of our streets, we have lots of school children, lots of students in this city, and you're treating this city as if it were just any other town in England. I think that is fundamentally wrong. I think you need to really beef up your game and make sure that the security of cyclists and of pedestrians is ensured. I'm really worried about the city centre scheme.
Okay. Dick and Mr. Lawton.
Yes.
You're on.
Yes, it's marriage guidance I'm really after. Back in November last year, your people wrote to us and said my wife had been growing some creeper up the column outside. Would we remove it quickly, please? So I dutifully climbed the column and undid all her clever facial work. I phoned your people and said, yes, you'll be around first week of May to do the lights. Well, first week of May is now gone, and I have a wife who keeps on saying to me, as if I'm the person to do this, when are they coming to fix it? I'm giving up sort of trying to find out answers to this, so where do I go to know what's happened to this? It's North Terrace in Cambridge. And general points around there, I told your people at the same time that there's contraptions left on the wall that you took down you didn't take them down 2 years ago. You cut them off 2 years ago and they're still on the wall with your white sticker on the bottom and they've never been removed. And then working it's old fitments that's been put up on one of the house walls just outside my backside. My backside. Bottom run okay. And the last point was lights across the footpath on Midsummer Common. I think you're going to replace those. We pleaded earnestly to have black columns, but I believe they're going to be silver. But it's not been done yet anyway. Is there any hope for black columns on the common?
Okay, very good. And finally, Mr. Lawton, then we'll come back to you on all these.
Yes, thank you in relation to black columns. Considering Maids Causeway, which is a street of some history, full of Grade 2 listed buildings, the streetlights there are old gas lamps, I understand they're being converted to electric. So it's a street deserving of some street lamps which are not absolutely box standard, and I think silver street lamps would be not very nice looking there. I think there's not much hope for historic lights in Maids Causeway. They seem to be missed off, and I do like to register a protest over this whole thing which has been going on for years. There does seem to be no consultation with community groups, residents associations, although we were aware of the issue, but we seem to have just fallen off the radar. I know residents of Park Parade have managed to negotiate a special deal for themselves. I'm very disappointed that residents of Maids Causeway were not, for instance, even brought into such a negotiation, because it is, I think, a fairly affluent street. We might have been able to finance some slightly special lights for ourselves, but seemingly no. So I'm very disappointed, but if there is any possibility of having black lights. It would go much better with the black railings which we have in this historic street. I think it would be very disappointing just to have plain bog standard silver lights.
Good point. Mr. Price?
Yeah, just very briefly to follow up John Norton's comment about the Park Parade. The residents of Park Parade are paying for those.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
What do they have to do?
Well, we didn't have the option.
Okay, so let's try and take some of these questions and see how we go. So, particular place, website, schedule of work.
Yeah. Sorry, I got prompted me on half the things I forgot to talk
That's
about.
all right. I'll do that. So, is there a particular website where somebody can go to find out when the schedule of work is? All the other information in relation to it?
Yeah, within lightingcambridgeshire.com we will have a dedicated area for the city centre timetable, and that will be a live timetable, so as things change. We'll put it on now, and obviously welcome feedback if there are issues, but if that changes we'll keep that up to date. We'll also, in addition, I've commissioned some on-site signage to go to attach to the barriers that explains the process of what's happening. So if we're leaving a site for overnight or whatever, why we've left it and what we're coming back to do, to try and inform people. And then on a wider point with that, for other areas and frankly some of the catalogue areas, which I can clearly see. One of the things there is the signage on site on barriers to explain why has this been left. So ultimately, yes, on the website, and we'll put some on-site signage there as well.
Okay, so the next one was from Wendy, which was digging holes relating to trees, methodology. What's the approach that's going to be taken? Particularly, we've got a lot of trees in the city centre. Which
There is a specific trees and design action group which most other councils sign up to, a procedure which sets out, sort of liaison where sort of people get together right at the beginning, different officers, tree officers, lighting, etc., and just work out. Because I've had loads and loads of letters about this regarding people complaining about and having to chase tree officers, and it just wastes so much time.
Yeah, I agree, and I need to just check in terms of a method statement and what's there. I don't know, I'm not familiar with the contract. However, what we do need to, I couldn't agree with you more, because it delays a lot in time as well by us not fully understanding implications. So we do liaise with the tree officers as well through that, but I'll check what we've got there within the method statements, and I'll bring that back to the committee.
Matthew McGrath knows about the trees and design action group policy. Cambridge City Council thinks it's a very good policy.
What I'll do is actually use that group as part of this overall programme and talk to them about the detail as well.
Okay.
So we'll do that regardless of any method statement.
The next question was 3 parts. City centre, are there new columns replacing wall-mounted lights? What are you going to do in relation to your barriers that seem to be all over the city, even when the job's finished? And Jesus Lane, you replaced a 10-metre pole with an 8-metre pole.
Wall-mounted units remain wall-mounted units. Sorry, I forgot wall-mounted units remain wall-mounted units. There aren't any new columns. Part of the work that we're doing, we're going through there. I will double check those, and we will come back and highlight anything in particular if there's a good reason for it. We may, but there are scenarios where we're putting in new columns because there's a need for an additional light. Very few involved. You can count in my hand how many there are. That's an exceptional circumstance. But on the whole, no, wall-mounted units remain wall-mounted units, and the main reason behind that is simply the maintenance risk of taking stuff off old buildings in a lot of cases, and the disruption. Barriers, absolutely right, we need to clear them up. I'll talk to our subcontractor to just have a sweep round anyway of anything that that's lying around. I noticed on myself when I was coming into Cambridge this evening, which I was on the phone about. Jesus Lane, the reason there's an 8 metre column gone in there is because we've had to order the 10 metre column, but we've put the 8 metre in as a temporary measure. So we're aware it's wrong.
The question was whether you know your assets. So that's
yeah, no, we do. But I mean, it's an important point in terms of communication. Yeah, we do these things, but we need to communicate that at least to the ward member so that you know the reason for it. So
okay,
good point.
That's good. And then I think Councillor Gearing was just Newnham in general. I mean, there are ongoing, I'm new to Ward Council, ongoing issues. So we had issues with the cycle paths. For example, you came and tarmacked one side of the cycle path and left the other side still with the barriers around for some reason. So those types of issues are common across, I'm sure it's not just Newnham, it's across all the areas basically where that happens.
Yeah.
And even after you've left, there's often a 1 to 2 centimetre drop because you haven't pressed the air, the earth hard enough.
Okay, so couple of things around that in terms of the staff, what's left there. The reason we're doing this in a different way, the reason that, exactly as you say, the concern about going into the city centre was about frightening for me as well, and about for British generally, because we would get this wrong, catastrophic for the community. That's why we've changed the approach. That's why we've got a dedicated team. That's why we're looking at wider training and improvements in terms of where these errors are occurring. One of the key, the first things I did was look through our customer complaints when I first arrived and the trends. And I'm trying to pick them off one by one in terms of the trends and put either whatever's required in place, whether it's training, whether it's change of method statements, whether it's communication, and whatever that might be. So I understand your concerns, and that's why we're trying to take a different approach here. We have got the dedicated team there. One thing I will do is when we talk about the hotline, for example, we have got the number back into the office, but what I will do is when that customer vehicle is going out, I'll share a timetable where that's going to be, so that effectively it's a one-stop shop on site where people can wander down to as well, so it gives that as an option as well. It's important to me, there may well be an issue. It's not going to, I can't promise for everything to be perfect. We're trying to improve things, but it's important that we react to those issues as quickly as we can as they're occurring. While the team are working in the city centre. And one thing just to add is that they'll be there before Christmas in November, but we're out because of Christmas lights switch on, Christmas embargo, and we're coming back again in the new year.
Okay, good. So very quickly, I just wanted to hit these because we have the other very important item, which is about switching the lights off once they've been installed. So firstly, how can you help Mr. Batten with his marriage? Then we have Summer Column, and then we have Nate's coursework.
I'll take all of those items individually and I'll check those myself tomorrow, and I'll either come back to you directly or through the committee just to address them. I don't know the individual cases, but I'll chase those myself tomorrow and quickly say the marriage.
And then in terms of the Mate's Causeway point, which I think is a very valid point, the ability for residents to actually have input in terms of whether or not there is some solution that they may contribute towards because, they want to preserve the street scene or whatever.
Two points around the consultation itself. As far as where Bound to operate we've been tasked with consulting with the City Council to agree what goes where. As an example in Park Parade, we haven't started any work there yet. I will check in terms of what's proposed, just to confirm that first of all.
Windsor style, I think.
Pardon?
Windsor style.
Windsor style.
Heritage.
Yes. Well, they would normally be black poles.
Yes. That's for Park Parade.
Oh, sorry.
No, this is Mains Causeway. So I think you would quite like something that's on Park Parade, possibly.
Lovely, but if if you're going to put in standard lights, can we have them black?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll check what's proposed in there.
Is black an option at all, ever?
Well, it is, but at a cost. Balfour Beatty have been paid just to put standard columns everywhere. So with the City Council and the County Council have funded us to do uplift. We can explore the same option as Park Parade if you'd like me to contact you about that. So
if we pass your details on to Sophie, is that okay?
I'll start by just checking what's proposed and then we'll look at other options.
Okay, so I'm going to take one last question on this, which is Beth, and then we're moving to the next item.
Potentially add to your load. Do we know when Reality Checkpoint is going to be refurbished, repainted, generally made to look lovely again? Because we might like it, and we'd like to see it look lovely again.
Marcus Peace, that's a light system. I don't think you're covering that.
It's not our work.
I think that's a city council. Is it about
Well, as you can tell, I don't know.
The historic light in one of the key green open spaces, Marcus Peace, it's called Reality Check.
Can we find out for the next meeting?
Well, I'll come back to you before.
So report back.
So Marcus Peace, sorry, what's it called?
It's Reality Checkpoint, it's called. Private program, probably from this item. Can I just ask, just so that, just for people and just so everybody's clear, when are you starting in the city centre? Are there letters of notification? The follow-up process for problems appears to be customer vehicle, possibly, but also is there a website, a portal where people can follow up? And all this will be live on lightingcambridge.com at some point in the near future.
Yeah. So at the moment we're due to start significant work on the 7th, from the 7th of November. Where we're going, we're still finalising the detail of that. Over last week and this week, we're talking to businesses and that programme may change.
Let us know, right. So will people, when you turn up on the 7th of November, will people have had letters to tell them that you're coming to do the work?
So the leaflets and letters will be issued in the next week or so, in the air at some point, but that will also be backed up with door knocking as well, which is not something we normally do, but we want to make sure we're doing in the city centre. And in terms of feedback, well, 3 avenues. Yes, the customer vehicle, but don't be relying on that. Inquiries at lightingcambridgeshire.com and the hotline number, which I've completely forgotten, 0800.
I'm sure we can follow up that.
Yeah. Well, I'll circulate.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Very good. Many thanks. Thanks for that. Thank you.
Could you please read out the website so that we can write it down?
So
you said inquiries at...
No, that's the email address is inquiries at lightingcambridgeshire.
Any dots?
No, at lightingcambridgeshire.com. We'll circulate website, phone number and email addresses.
Thank you.
We'll do. I'll send that through.
Great. Many thanks. Thank you very much. So now we turn to the final item, which is in relation to switching the lights off. So, where everybody's gone. Sorry. I'll come back.
Well, I'm impressed that everybody's still here. Well, everybody that is here. So, before the lights do go off, so I'm lead of the council, but within that brief is public safety. So I'm not the lighting authority, that's the county council, and there are a couple of county councillors here. So it's a county council responsibility, but because it's a public safety issue, particularly in a city like Cambridge, we wanted to come and just explain the issues, albeit that in a way it should be the county council that should be coming to explain it. But the reason for it coming to the area committees is that we've been in dialogue with the county council, and they effectively extended the period for consultation to allow comments to come back. They haven't. This is one of the least active consultations in my experience ever. But the issue is that, as Linda will add to, that the County Council originally put in this year's budget to switch off the lighting, i.e. to try and save the money this financial year, and I don't know, for various reasons they didn't get moving, and their proposal currently is to switch off the lighting in the city. Yeah, no, I'm not going to steal your stuff, but to switch off lighting overnight, and so effectively there is a consultation now, and Linda will make a contribution and I'll make a contribution, but effectively we've got some maps which are on our website, and I could show you the market and the Unum and the Castle ones, but I'll let Linda start and then I'll have something else to say.
I think, as you've gathered by now, the County Council have a proposal to dim street lights and turn off lights in other areas, a number of areas across the county. At the moment, the proposal is between 12 midnight and 6. It will have a significant impact on the city because about 1/3 of the lighting that's within this system is in Cambridge City, and the rest of it is around market towns and smaller villages. Strategy and Resources Committee did consider a report in July setting out the framework of the proposal and the kind of concerns we had in the city and suggesting areas for consideration. Those areas were around crime reduction, road safety, public safety and fear of crime. And we've put that report in front of you this evening, and we're asking you to consider it and comment on the areas that you feel that we should take up in our negotiations around with the county around this proposal.
So, so just to give a bit more information, there's been a dialogue with the County Council. The position of the City Council is we don't see any justification for switching the lights off in the city. The purpose of coming out to the area committees is to really just investigate and challenge the details. So if you go on our website after the meeting, or if you want to have a look at the map now, confusingly, all the lights, all the roads in green are to have their lights switched off, and the roads and pathways to retain lights are firstly the main roads, secondly are the actual core of the city centre, i.e. the commercial core, including the late night economy area. Various paths that have been put in by the county, some of them at our suggestion, that are definitely do need lighting. A little bit of a hodgepodge, like some footpaths into, say, Jesus Green, but not footpaths to get you out again. So a real mixture. So it's an issue about what should be definitely lit in detail. Issues of principle, like transport interchanges, given that people have got to get the coaches, got to get to and from the station. Issues of the late night economy in terms of the safety, particularly for women to get home, but also workers, all the people to get home. So issues of that, we've argued about CCTV, relocatable CCTV, areas of known crime hotspots. We have also argued about the timing. Other areas, including rural areas, have decided not to switch it off until 1 in the morning, and then from 5 people are starting to go out to work. We know that police view is critical in the sense that it can't see that it's going to improve and have concerns about risks. We've got a planned meeting with the county, including the police and Community Safety Partnership, which is the citywide partnership. We've seen we've seen an equalities assessment, which is a combined assessment including what I thought was a refreshing contribution, certainly from some of my previous exchanges with Bath Beating, but it's a combined equalities including street lighting, reorganisation and overnight, and certainly I'd hope that the county councillors here could challenge the whole equalities assessment that hasn't been done. But so essentially it's almost like a bit of a war of attrition, if you like. But it's at the same time a principle.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are we, this is going to happen regardless of what we try and do? Or is this something where we can actually try and stop it in the city? Is that so in some ways the feedback this evening, if it's basically, can we stop it? Is that what you're looking for, that type of feedback?
In politics nothing's impossible. So I think there's particularly the county council in its current mix, it could be stopped. I just think there's in addition to, if I was arguing in a rural area, I'd have similar points. In addition to that we are an overnight city. We're not a buzzing whizzo place all the way through the night, but we are a busy city all the way through the night.
Okay, so Councillor Singer, very keen to speak.
Sorry, jumping up down.
So,
thank you. I think this is probably the most important item we've got this evening, and I really want to urge this meeting and Councillor Herbert to push back at the county very, very strongly on this. The report that we've got talks about how this went through the county's budget proposals. What actually went through the county's budget proposals was widespread dimming of the streetlights, and it was only during the course of this year that the county council's officers came to the conclusion that dimming the streetlights wasn't going to make them enough savings, and it was that actually what they needed to do was switch them off. And to my mind, there is an enormous difference between dimming streetlights and actually switching them off. And I think that in Cambridge we need to be extremely clear and very united that they should not switch off the streetlights in this city. What the County Council are doing across the whole county is going out to parish councils who have their own tax raising powers to ask them whether they want to pay to keep their streetlights on between midnight and 6 or whether they want to turn them off. And actually, if you're in a village and you've got a parish council with tax raising powers, maybe that's not so unreasonable. And the feedback that I'm getting from rural councillors is that many of their villages are quite happy to turn the streetlights off between midnight and 6. And I can see why, if you live in a village, that's, again, not totally unreasonable, because if you live in a village, if you're out between midnight and 6, the chances are you're out in a car. And Cambridge is absolutely, completely different from that. And this is the point that we have to hammer home to the County Council at every possible opportunity. And I think the thing that's missing in your excellent summary of all the reasons why they should not do this is the impact that this may have on congestion in the city, which is something the county care about a lot. If you stop people cycling home after midnight because the roads are pitch black, they may well not cycle to work in the morning. And I know a lot of people who come home after work, after midnight, because people in Cambridge work funny hours. And if they know that when they come home it's going to be pitch black, they may well choose to drive to work instead. And if they do that, that will have a catastrophic effect on our already very heavily congested streets. So my message is, please don't think that we've already lost this battle. I don't know whether we have, but I think we absolutely have to keep fighting it. I think there are lots and lots and lots of reasons why Cambridge should be treated differently. One argument I will be making is that I'm quite sure that per head of population we get less spent on resurfacing our roads. And for that reason, it's not unreasonable that we get better cycling facilities because we use them. We need our streetlights.
okay, very good. So I have Councillor Gearing, Councillor Kearns, Councillor Gillespie, and then Beth so far.
Yeah, just to underline that there are a couple of real safety issues. The students have campaigned to light up dark spots, and as the university moves to the west and more faculties go to the West Cambridge side, we have a real problem because there are lab hours that are in the middle of the night. You're creating, or the county council here is creating a real gender imbalance by just switching everything off and making the way to the lab, from the lab, insecure, further tilting the subject balance in those subjects. I think it's completely unreasonable, especially the area around the colleges, say Grange Road, and then up the Castle Ward colleges. I think we've had criminal incidents that were very serious in dark spots, and we've now improved the street lighting, and now we're switching it off. It's just unbelievable.
Okay, Councillor Kearns, and then Councillor Gillespie.
I share people's concerns, and as you won't be surprised to hear, I've already had quite a lot of communication with people since this paper was published. I think it might have been helpful if the county council had been given some notice of this, and I think you might have had some senior sort of members of staff wanting to come, and I think there was some concern raised about the approach that was taken. But I understand that the concerns have been raised. I would say, however, that if we were to win this and keep the lighting as it is, or just dimmed and not switched off, it would be dishonest of me to say that won't have an implication, because it will. Because the county council, as I've said for the last 2.5 years, is under crisis. And if we don't do this, and that could be a choice, and we might be able to make that case, then something else will happen, and it might be less money spent on roads, it might be less library provision, it might be less money spent on social care packages, but it will have an implication because we do not have the money. And also the reality is, whilst we all want this lighting, it is not a statutory duty, and we are now at the point at the county council, and I think because of poor management for many years, that we are having to look at what we do as statutory, and I recognise that it possibly could make more cost in the long run in all sorts of ways, but if we don't make this saving, because we won't make the level of savings we need, it seems, from dimming alone, then there will be cuts elsewhere.
Okay, Councillor Gillespie, and then I'm going to Beth.
The recommendations are to note the comments on the Strategy and Resources Committee report. Also note Councillor Martin Smart talking about large areas of darkness. This is also true in Market. Unbelievable in a city centre. It will be good for astronomers, good for muggers, bad for everyone else. I think it was Councillor Sinnott who said something important as well about stress levels caused by the darkness. The fear and stress this causes will mean that the cortisol hormone causes major mental health issues. So I haven't seen the equality report yet. I'm glad that you have. But I want to see it. I'll expect to see major negative effects on mental health, safety of women, vulnerable people, and potentially hate crime. It's galling that when we talk about the need for renewables and the need for removing fossil fuels, the Tories are the first to say, oh, well, it's all very well until the lights go out. It's because of austerity and broken localism that the lights are going out now.
Okay, Beth.
Right. I have a great deal of sympathy with what Lucy and Marcus have said. I think it seems it looks utterly perverse from a resident's perspective to stick in new lights and then switch them off. And it also seems slightly perverse to put lights on Parker's Piece and then potentially switch them off when students have campaigned so vigorously for them. I do, however, feel sure there must be some kind of robust kind of discussion to be had about whether or not we can factor in those places that already have lighting from businesses with those areas that don't have any because businesses have their security lights on, all those kind of things. So in that case, it's kind of they are sort of in some way providing some lighting. So from outside here, you could theoretically dim some lighting or from them off, and it wouldn't be so bad. But in some areas in the city centre, it would be a complete catastrophe. Queen's Road, for example. It's. I think I remember vividly trying to cycle down there a few years ago when the lights stopped working. You could not see a thing. It was horrible. So there are those places where you really absolutely cannot see a thing. That it really, really needs some lights, and the idea of switching those off is preposterous, but there must be some kind of no doubt hard-fought battle where you sort of reach some
so I have a very good point, and then have Councillor Holland, and then I'll go back to Councillor Herbert and make some final comments.
I was just going to ask, can anyone tell us the difference in costs between the dimming scenario and the lights out scenario? And I'm quite struck that nobody has mentioned sustainability, even our Queen elected members, and I would have thought that was actually a positive aspect of this. And there was a time, I was elected in 2004 to 2008, and I remember the controversy when the nighttime economy was introduced to the city centre, and the perception of danger and crime was supposed to be prevented by improved street lighting. And prior to that, the city centre did not have the scale of lighting that it currently does. The other aspect is that I've had residents come to me and ask for baffles because the new lighting that's been installed by Balfour Beatty, and they have actually reduced the number of pillars, but some people don't actually want that scale of lighting. So, I can see there's a little party campaign on both sides going on this, and I just want to sort of raise the point of sustainability, the reality of the economics of it, and in some cases, of course there are, we don't want danger or whatever, but some people actually welcome more gently lit streets.
Okay. Councillor Nathinga, Councillor Holt, then we'll go back to Councillor Herbert, trying to wrap up in the next 5-10 minutes. But I recognise it's an important issue.
I just wanted to pick up on what Councillor Holland was saying about sustainability and dimming, because I think on the sustainability issue, it would not take very many more people getting in their cars and driving every day to completely undo the sustainability of turning the lights off between midnight and 6 a.m, which is often the time when electricity is cheap anyway. But I do think that there's a really important point about the brightness of the current streetlights, because I think one possible solution might be not to turn the streetlights off in the middle of the night, but to have them dimmer a lot more of the time, because I really don't think that there's a need to have them as bright in many residential areas as they are. So I think that's something that we need to ask some questions about. I don't think that I'm not sure that enough work has been done there.
Okay. Councillor Holt, and back to Councillor Herbert.
I wonder, is it possible to have a variation across the week? So, for example, on the Huntingdon Road, there was relatively little evening traffic Monday to Thursday, but Friday and Saturday are quite heavy. So it may be possible to introduce different timetables and save money that way.
Okay. So quite a range of comments, observations, few questions.
Well, I think in principle, I just think that the meeting should reach a view and just state a view, because I'd like to see each of the area committees take a view. In terms of just information first, I understand, well, the report that we've shared with you says that the target, it talks about £274,000, I think that was a year before dimming started across the county. And the information we had was, firstly, that the Hammond stage is already dimmed by 40% in a subtle way, by going down to 90% and 80% and 70% and 60%. And in each stage, people haven't noticed perceptibly the difference that's made. So I think already, so in terms of the county's bill, our understanding was that it was roughly about 100k before the dimming. But with the dimming, that's effectively saved roughly 40% of the electric. So we're down to sort of 60 to 70k a year. Now I take Councillor Kern's point that that money is money that the county doesn't have much of in the future, just the way it's going. But I just still argue that that is an important 60 or 70k.
So just on your point of dimming, so across the city, the new poles in effect have been dimmed gradually, and we haven't really noticed. Is that?
Yeah, insofar as the lights are controllable, and I'm not. I might be an expert on some things, but I'm not a very expert on lampposts. So there's a bunch of there's a bunch of lampposts that haven't been dimmed, right. but there's that other thing. So that's the quantum, and then it would just be what I'd suggest is if there's some in principle decision from each of the area committees, but that you take a view. I mean, you are at the heart of the city. You've got the greatest amount of walking, cycling journeys in the middle of the night, and clearly, I don't think the city council would have any difference of view about keeping a whole chunk of the city centre compulsorily lit, simply because it has to be safe. And as a couple of people have said, we do get targeting of dark spots by people who are intent on either drunken or non-drunken attacks. So I think you take your view. I'm not coming. You know where I stand. But I just want this to be a consultation. And we did. Sorry, just one last point. We did invite the county council people, and there was reasonable notice in our judgment. And we will test it out, Councillor Kearns, on the subsequent 3 other meetings, because they will have had splendid notice for those.
Yeah, to be fair, I think we were aware of this for quite a time, other than I did. So I'll open it back up for some more comments, and then I'm going to make a suggestion as to where I think comments are leading us in terms of particular recommendations. So Councillor Vick first, Councillor Kearns, and then yourself, and then Mr. Lawton. Councillor Vick.
I mean, like other people who've spoken, I'm very uncomfortable about this for all the same reasons. As a ward councillor, I'm going out and consulting residents because I do find this quite a complicated question. And there are many people who are worried about the alternatives for money that isn't saved this way. And I personally feel that I would like to listen to what residents have to suggest as a response to this in practical terms in relation to their streets. And I think that it would provide very constructive ammunition to what Councillor Herbert is doing here, which is very welcome. But I would hesitate to, at the same time as asking my residents what they would suggest about this, I would hesitate sort of putting my hand up, giving my view in advance of hearing those suggestions. So if there was a way of us expressing extreme discomfort with what's going on here, and leaving the door open through either the City Council machinery or the County Council machinery for individual councillors to feed in some of those suggestions, I would be very grateful, because I think that there could be some very good suggestions And as people have said, some people actually may surprise us in their reactions, although I think that overwhelmingly we're going to find a level of criticism.
Yes, Councillor Adams, and then basically at the member on this table will speak.
Do you think the City Council will be prepared to contribute financially? Because, I mean, as no other area of the county will be, at the moment, will be keeping their lights on unless the area pays. Because, I mean, there just isn't. If we do this, we will have to find the saving elsewhere, and it will impact on everybody in this room, in a different way, because that is the absolute crisis that we are in.
We'll take some more questions first, and then we'll come back to it.
I've just been listening to all the arguments, and I think there are the things that I'm concerned about are one there's far too much light pollution anyway, and so the idea that you can't exist without light everywhere. I mean, the whole countryside exists in total darkness at night, and they don't get mental illnesses. Yes. But equally, I am very aware of that Cambridge is unique in Cambridgeshire. I mean, it's all very well to say the rest of the county isn't going to do this, but we are very different, and I'm very aware of the safety aspect. Have all the councillors seen that map? Because we haven't seen the map, because until you see that, you can't tell really what's being proposed, and I think one shouldn't make a decision without seeing that. But equally, trying successive dimming strikes me as a very good idea. If we've gone down 40%, maybe we could try another 20% and see if anybody notices.
Okay, Mr. Lawton, and then I've got Councillor Gearing, and then we're kind of going to have to come to some form of view.
Yes, I think more dimming is a much better proposal than lights out, which does seem extraordinarily extreme cut. So perhaps there could be some experimentation with light levels. Some light level is much better than no light level, and that seems much more acceptable. In terms of budget, this does seem actually, in terms of county council budget, a very small amount of money for a massive consequence and a massive PR disaster for the county council. If we're talking about saving in road budget, the road budget is absolutely massive, and one minor road scheme would put off, or council would pay for your streetlights for quite a long time, I would have thought. So it seems a very small amount we're talking about, really, for a massive impact.
Yeah, just a quick suggestion to also involve the educational institutions that are based in our wards, because I think the colleges, the tutors have something to say about switching off all the lights on Grange Road. And it has nothing, in my view, to do with light pollution. It's much more polluting if a car in the middle of the night just drives through a completely dark road.
So I think, and people do shout if this is not the correct interpretation. I think the comment Mr. Lawton made most probably is reflecting what the majority of people say, which is not off, but actually be much more creative in terms of some streets dimming more, some streets, and I'm assuming the new technology from the new poles enables you to do it on a street-by-street basis, different days and so forth. So, sorry, Councillor Singer.
Just very quickly, I think that the dimming that's been done so far is only for the midnight to 6 p.m. So I think it would be interesting to take that forward and so that the dimming happened much earlier and you could make more sense. It's from 10, okay.
It's kind of like a...
But I still think
so again, it's along that same theme, that basically not off, but more creative in terms of adjustments on the illumination. Can I just say, interestingly, I mean, in Newnham we have a email circulation list, went out to 700 people. It was quite mixed. Some people were quite keen to have the lights switched off. Some people, for sustainability reasons. So it was a mixed affair.
I'm surprised not to hear mention of motion sensing lampposts. These were discussed in the Strategy and Resources Committee meeting as well, I think. I've just been in
Yeah.
one bus cycling along the Palisade just at night time along the beachfront with the lampposts are all motion sensing. It seems to work fairly well.
Yeah, I noticed that. So, yeah. Does that help in terms
Yeah,
of...
no, I mean, that, I think as Councillor Vick said, that I think it's right to sort of take some in principle views about things, and for the dialogue to continue. I think I think the view of the City Council is it's a difficult one. We haven't made a fuss about the fact that we already pick up some of the tabs, and we have done for about 10 years on various things. And it wouldn't be right, I don't think, for the city to jump in and say, look, we'll start picking up the tab for the county council, because effectively we pay twice as residents. But I do think there's a mixture, and I just mentioned that other bits of the city might take a different view. I mean, if people in quieter corners of Newnham like the idea of it being a bit darker, then there may be parts of the city that might take that view or accept it. But I think the suggestions of Mr. Lawton, I think, are really quite interesting, and I think we certainly need to be practical in some of our response. So we welcome views. I just also think that through the councillors and through each of the wards, that we just want that feedback. So if it's sent to Councillor Hickford and copied to either myself or Linda Kilkelly, then it just means that we know what's being shared and we can have a view. So thank you for the time.
What's the timeline on this being concluded?
So we've got, with the freedom that area committees have, I think the North area meets in November, so you've got the most time, and I welcome that, because I do think the city centre has particular issues. As you said, Councillor Gehring, we also wanted this autumn consultation, because what's the point of talking about the city centre if the university and the colleges aren't about? So we will fully involve them. So we say basically by the end of November is where we want to get it all back together again. But the maps are on the website, and obviously have a look at the map. It's a draft, and the council would accept that they're up for negotiation on a lot of this.
Okay, very good. Many thanks. And I think that is the final item, other than notices. So, in terms of notices, there's a public consultation in relation to the City Deal bus route that goes live on the 12th of October, I think that's correct, for 6 weeks. So that's an important consultation that's taking place, impacting people in the west of the ward. And in relation to the next meeting, that is on December the 3rd. So look forward to seeing you then. Many thanks.
Just as a point of clarification there, I expect, and I'm not on top of everything tonight, but I expect that with the local plan rephasing of the consultation, there is no direct link between the local plan and the transport issues. But I expect that there might be some rescheduling, simply because some people will link issues of plan and transport. So.
Okay. And the local plan, just for clarification, the local plan consultation now is start of December, break for Christmas, and then carry on a bit in January.
But people will know what the proposals are from the end of October.
Very good. Many thanks, everyone. Thank you very much.